The wonders of learning new technology. We're live now. Welcome. This is the weekly show from I'm Ginger Dan.
Wow, that was an intro. I'm Mike.
You should have known I don't know what to do.
I've been on the show 5 times now.
You think I pay attention to the intros?
Should.
Oh, speaking of how many times, speaking of mention of numbers, this is episode 26. So we are half a year done. Well, not done. We've done half a year.
Yeah, we've done. The show's ending exactly 1 year. No, it's.
Well, that'll be the.
Well, actually, this is the reboot, so this is really only the first episode.
We could do it in
a new platform.
Well, to make up for episode 25 not being super big and bloated, this episode's going to be super long and bloated. Almost think of it as an anniversary issue.
Yeah, we'll actually be done at exactly this time tomorrow. It's going to be a 24-hour stream.
I don't think that's possible because I think StreamYard only lets us do 6 hours at a time.
Really?
We'll just take very quick breaks.
I'm down to attempt a 24-hour stream sometime, just for the hell of it. I don't know when I would be able to.
Dramatic reading of the entire collected works of Mark Waid, 24-hour live.
Jesus.
That would probably take longer.
Yeah, I don't know if that'd be a dramatic reading so much as a very quick reading.
And you said last episode was not overloaded. I'm pretty sure we went 3 hours.
We didn't go 3 hours. We went 2 hours. But this show might go 3 hours.
I really hope
we haven't
not.
hit 3 hours yet. We came really close a few weeks ago with the San Diego week. Was really close.
Well, we're going to get right into it. Well, not really. First, some of us have some haul stuff, I guess.
Am I going first? Cool. I got a couple of single issues for some custom mines I want to do. Unfortunately, I already put them away, but I do have this to show off. Lightning racers. I'm kidding. This was an ad that I pulled out of the thing I worked on a lot of today, which was this, which is the first steps in a custom bind that I'm doing myself. The reason it's Starman is because it was cheap, and if I fuck it up, I'm not going to care.
So what is it?
What is it? It's just Will Payton Starman. This is going to be book 1 of 2, and it's issues 1 through 25. In hindsight, I probably wouldn't want to do 25 issues again. But yeah, I think it actually turned out pretty well. I don't know how much detail you can get, but you can see like it's all sewed and stuff. All the issues in a line. I took out the ads where I could. I didn't really fuck anything up too much.
Is that 43 issues?
I think the entire series is 44, but in the second volume, there's a crossover with the Superman titles that I'm going to add in, which that bumps it up to 24 issues.
Okay. You're including all, do you have all the Superman issues yet?
No, I only had the first 25, and I think I'm missing 8 or 9 of the Starman issues, and I need to find the Superman issues still.
Okay. Because I'm tentatively, as you might imagine, have the same idea to eventually get to. Might want to flip through the Superman stuff. I don't know how prominent he is in the whole crossover, but also it's a story arc, so maybe just include the whole thing.
Yeah, that was my thinking.
And the one thing I almost don't want to say this because I don't want to nitpick or annoy you, but I don't think you would care about this. He has a kind of prominent guest appearance in another Superman issue, like earlier in the run.
Mm-hmm.
But that issue also happens to be the first appearance of Maxima.
Oh boy.
Which means that potentially it's hard to find. But I think it's like a few pages. It's basically Superman just saying like, "Hey, you're cool."
Yeah, no, I think I'll be good without that. But yeah, it was a fun process sewing it all up and everything. It was kind of cool to get a glimpse at all the stories and the ridiculous amount of guest appearances, like every 3 issues or so.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to see the final result.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to learn a ton of Photoshop first, though.
Oh, are you making like?
I'm gonna try to make my own cover because I'd rather not do a like I just wouldn't even know how to go about doing like a like the ones you have that you got made by whatever company. I don't know how I would get that material, so I'm gonna try and print up my own, but we'll see how that goes.
That you're not sending this one to a bindery, right? You're completely doing it yourself.
I
Right?
am completely doing it myself. I'd say I did like a third of the work already.
You said, are you going to go to Ollie's and buy one of those?
Funny you should say that. I went to Goodwill today and found some books that would be about the right size and tore up the covers a little bit. So I already have the cardboard.
Ooh.
This is going to be a small cover. It only just covers everything, but for my purposes, once I clean it up, I think it'll be fine. Again, like this first one is really just a test to see if I can actually do this.
Interesting.
And let's give a quick shout out, I believe, to Cartoonist Kayfabe.
Yeah,
slightly
that's
inspiring this project.
100%. I don't think I would have thought to try and bind my own comics had I not watched that video.
My haul, I did not make these books myself. This is, let me put the camera on me. This is Conan the Barbarian, the original Marvel Years, Volume 2 Omnibus, or whatever the correct order of those words are. It collects Conan 27 through 51, Annual 1, Giant Size 1 to 4, material from Savage Sword 1, 8, and 10. So the first volume was literally just the entire Barry Windsor Smith run. And so this is, Windsor Smith is gone. This is John Buscema, tiny bit of Gil Kane, all Roy Thomas, still in the 70s, I believe. And this new cover is by Dale Kuhn. And actually, I think it's all right. The first book, new cover, was by, I think it's not Assad Ribic. I think it was Mahmoud Aswar, but whoever it was, it kind of sucked in my opinion. And then I got Amazing Spider-Man, Kraven's Last Hunt Epic Collection.
Did yours have a curve of the spine like mine did?
Yeah, I was about to say, didn't you got this like last week? Yeah.
Yeah, it was a couple weeks ago.
This is a new copy, so my spine's all good. I'm kind of every once, like whenever I make an order or something, I'm trying to get the these three Spider-Man epics in a row: Kraven, and then Venom and Assassination.
Just get the omnibus for God.
Oh yeah, no. Speaking of Kraven's Last,
I had it.
Yeah, if you'll note, I did glue it, and I think it actually worked pretty well.
Dan is a DIY machine over here.
Yeah, this was step 0 in my comic book making journey. See if I can glue shit the right way. Turns out, I think I can.
All right, that's our haul. 8 minutes in, not terrible. We'll see if we get to 3 hours. Our retro book this week is The Flash, Volume 1, number 130 from August 1962. There are 2 stories in here, but both of them are by the creative team of writer John Broome and artist Carmine Infantino. In the first story, it's a Flash story. Barry Allen is visiting the dentist, and then he hears Mirror Master on the radio up to some shit. But he goes to check in, and Mirror Master's in prison. Then the Trickster attacks him, but the Trickster is in prison somehow. Captain Cold, the Top, Captain Boomerang, they all show up. They're all up to some shit. So Barry thinks, what is the one thing that connects them all? And it is their defense lawyer. So he goes to him, and the lawyer smokes a pipe, and the pipe is some kind of thing which knocks out the Flash. And it turns out this weirdo lawyer has been posing as the villains and now poses as the Flash. But actually, it's all a ruse for Mirror Master, which is kind of, I expected it, and it makes sense for the Flash story, but also slightly disappointing that this lawyer is just not like this weird megalomaniac who switches between taking over identities of villains just to do nonsense. But the lawyer is being controlled by Mirror Master, and he gets Mirror Master out of prison, and then Mirror Master slips back into his costume because he's more comfortable, he's more villainous. And the Flash is in this inescapable death trap using like mirrors and a bomb and shit like that. And so Mirror Master's like, yeah, if you move, you're dead. And you'll eventually move. And the Flash manages. Oh, and also, I thought it was funny. Mirror Master says, I'm only doing one last job, and then I'm going to retire, move to Mexico, and I'll be nice to children. And Barry figures out how to escape by using his tongue to loosen up his filling, which he got that morning, and spit out his filling with accuracy and enough force for this filling, which at this point in 1962, it might be metal, to spit out the filling to break a pilot light, which controls the circuitry for the trap or something. And the lawyer breaks out of his spell, so he remembers the Mirror Master's heist, which I don't know why Mirror Master would have told him or like how he knows. So Flash runs over and like very quickly actually resolves everything and gets rid of the Mirror Master. And he does this by grabbing him and shaking him upside down. So he just drops dozens of mirrors. And there's a cheesy joke where Mirror Master's like, oh, 7 years bad luck for everyone. And Flash is like, add him up. That's how long you'll be in prison. And I'm sure Mirror Master's next appearance is like 3 issues later or some shit. And in the end of the story, Flash goes back to the dentist to get his filling back. Let's kind of sum up, give our thoughts on the story separately. So I'll ask you guys what you think about this story in a second, but I want to quickly say, I mean, I enjoy it for the indefinitely on pause Crisis Cast. We read a lot of Silver Age Flash, and I think for the most part, everyone who was on those shows enjoyed them. A lot of people, because a lot of us are big fans of Wally, we're kind of iffy. Some of us more than others are iffy on Barry, but I think these are kind of fun, very Silver Age DC stories, and also, well, I'll get to the other part later. But I mean, Infantino's art is just perfect, and there's like a few scenes where it's just like he just does cool things. Like there's a scene where Barry shows up to the jail and he's like leaning backwards, like really leaning on the desk, and he just looks really slick. And then later he's like overwhelmed by paperwork because all these villains are up to no shit, and he's in his day job as a police scientist, and he has his bow tie untied around his neck. I don't know, Infantino, and then of course his Flash is just perfectly shaped, the perfect costume design, and all the speed lines and action. It's all a lot of fun. What do you guys think?
I enjoyed this a lot. This is so much fun, and I think that's what kind of separates Silver Age Flash from a lot of the other DC books at that time. Even though I had fun with Superman last week, I ended the show last week saying this might be my favorite retro book we've read, and I think it's pretty damn close. But I think this has the added thing of we saw Mirror Master, that's my favorite Flash villain. So, and then also the backup story, which we'll get to, with it's not only a Kid Flash story, but it's his teaming up with Elongated Man for the first time, and I like both of those characters a lot. That was an added bonus, but like, yeah, I kind of like the beginning of the story with the Flash just being trapped and Mirror Master giving this crazy evil monologue, and then we have this crazy lawyer trying to switch in and out of costumes, taking over masquerading as the Flash, and you get the classic moments of the Flash in his ring and putting the costume back on. I thought this was just super fun, and then like Infantino's art is timelessly perfect for the Flash. All the colors are right, so everything for me is kind of perfect from everything I'd want from a Silver Age Flash story.
Yeah, I agree. The art is definitely the standout here in this issue. Personally, even though I haven't read too much Silver Age or Silver Age DC even, I feel like the plot was like a bit tame compared to other stuff you could get, and like part of the thing I love about the Silver Age is just the zany, out there, makes no sense plot, and it would have been nice to have like a bit more of that, but it was still good to read.
Yeah, I was gonna make Mike's point, he and I read a Superman issue from basically the same exact era last week, and I feel like this feels way later. I mean, not way later, but this feels like 5 years ahead of the Superman book.
Mm.
The second story here, and I think they're about the same length. Or this one's relatively long. I think this one's like 10 or 12 pages or something. This is Kid Flash meets the Elongated Man, so also kind of lucked upon a key issue in a way. Wally West is living in Blue Valley, which is, by my accounts, whenever we get a DC geographic reference, we got to go back to the map. By my record, Blue Valley is in Nebraska.
You'd be correct.
Which is actually like relatively far from Central City. It would take you 250 miles driving to get from Blue Valley to Central City.
Which
of course,
makes
that doesn't mean anything when you.
Wally West only got to spend time with his Aunt Iris and Uncle Barry for 1 week out of the summer. That would be his big kind of trip. Or I think he'd like maybe spend a month or so. But yeah, over summer vacation.
Barry and Iris are going on vacation to the West Coast. And this is actually shown in Green Lantern number 13. So it's a crossover of sorts, which I was pretty surprised to see. I mean, the Flash is several years. Barry Allen is several years into his run. I mean, he starts in 56. So he's been around 6 years, which is a long time. I'm sure that felt like a long time at that point. But I was pretty surprised that you kind of have you already have cross-pollination and crossovers in 1962 at DC. That was interesting to me because 62, I mean, most of the Marvel characters are created by this point, but 62, all the characters are still really barely off the ground. And like, you know, I don't think the anthologies have split yet. So you still have people sharing books and the Tales to Astonish, Tales to Suspense, stuff like that. But in Green Lantern number 13, you can read about Barry's vacation. Also, that issue, also written by John Broome. So that's the interesting connection. But DC, in their editorial note, says, read the June 1962 issue of Green Lantern, which, you know, if you had the issues, you could flip through them and figure it out. Or if you went to the stands, you could figure it out that way. But eventually they'll, you know, fully figure out, hey, just put the number of the issue. Because, you know, I wouldn't want to look up which issue was June 1962.
Yeah, I was gonna say, did the covers still have the where they'd have the number and then below it it'd be, you know, like whatever month and then the year? Do they have that back then, or is that not done yet?
I should be able to double check Green Lantern number 13, but they should have the month.
Yeah, they have
probably
the
not the
Flash. Yeah, they don't have.
Yeah, Green Lantern says June number 13. So, but also like a lot of this stuff was considered disposable. So maybe DC's like, okay, it's 1962 right now. Whatever Green Lantern some random kid has, they probably just have the current stuff, unless they have an older brother or something. Because, you know, there's no back issues at this point, anything like that. But to the actual story, Barry's going out of town, but the Elongated Man wanted to have a team up. So he's like, hey, little teenager, you go do this for him. And Wally's still wearing his mini Flash costume.
Yeah, that's his first suit.
Instead of the yellow. And the yellow comes in Flash 135. So we're actually super close to that.
That's pretty cool.
And I kind of forgot, is this in Born to Run? Apparently
it is.
No, I mean, what I'm saying is apparently the yellow costume, he got that after getting struck by lightning again. I think that's what happened.
I don't remember the yellow suit showing up in Born to Run at all.
Okay, then maybe they.
Yeah, I don't remember it either. He might have just glossed over it.
But I quickly read like the wiki entry, and I believe like switching to the new suit is after he gets struck by lightning again. So Wally gets struck by lightning twice. Maybe that's why he's the best Flash. And also when he pulls out the ring and gets in costume, I don't know if this is just that I don't read a ton of Flash, haven't read a ton of Flash recently, even though we're keeping up with the currently published Flash book. But the issue points out that the ring works via a chemical formula on the costume, which expands it when exposed to air.
Yeah, and it contracts with a slight zap of electricity. That's how they get it back in.
Do they always reference that? In my head, I always thought like they kind of relaxed on that and were just like spring activated stuff, and he's really fast, so he can change into it immediately.
I don't remember. I feel like it's referenced at least in the beginning of Mark Waid's run before he gets the Speed Force suit, but
I'm almost certain Johns has probably referenced it because he's a Flash.
Maybe Johns too.
So here's the other thing. Back to geography. Wally claims to travel 2,000 miles to meet up with the Elongated Man in Wyoming, which is completely wrong. Even if somehow he was coming from Central City, which we know he's not, but Central City would be farther. And if he's going to the exact farthest northwest point of Wyoming, that's not even close to 1,000 miles. So they're pretty off. And that's driving. He has super speed. He can go in a straight line.
Well, it's driving in 1961 too.
Maybe he forgot something at home halfway there.
But basically, I mean, the actual plot of this issue, not a ton happens. The weather wizard has an entire county hostage, extorting them under threat of basically he has them in a frozen winter wonderland and asking them for money and robbing places and everything. And his eventual plan is to do that, way larger scale. The duo find him, they beat him up, they win, they put him in jail. It turns to spring again. And otherwise, mostly worth noting is you get a bit of chemistry between the two characters because this is their first time meeting each other. And we get some cool feats from both of them, but especially Elongated Man, whose powers are pretty weird and cool. I mean, he turns himself into a bridge, and then there's this one vertical panel where you just see him stretch up 200 feet or something to check out a house. And then Wally does this thing where he super speed shakes Elongated Man to restore his circulation because of whatever. It doesn't matter. This was a pretty fun story too.
Yeah, I definitely liked this story just a tad better than the main story. The plot, like you said, was definitely a little bit on the simpler side, but I liked reading Wally and I liked reading Elongated Man.
Yes,
but it is wackier to your measure.
A little bit, yes. It is kind of wacky to hold a county hostage by just saying hey, I'm just going to make the winter worse for you, and you have to pay me $100,000 to get spring. Which I kind of wonder what he would do if he didn't get the $100,000 by the time a year went around and it just became winter again anyway. At what point do the townspeople just be like, you know what, this is fine. People in Alaska do this all the time.
Yeah, I thought in terms of, I also, like I said, I enjoyed this more, but there's little moments in it that I really like too. Wally's well, I can definitely help the Flash by doing this and doing him a solid by covering for him here. Also, I was going to spend the weekend with my friend anyway, so I'm not really lying to my mom if I become friends with Elongated Man by the end of this. So, I will be doing that.
Yeah, that was great.
Kind of very fun,
and also just the absurdity of how it came about. Like Vince mentioned, Barry's going on vacation, so he's just oh, I'll just give my teenage sidekick nephew this, and me having recently read the I think it's in Flash by Waid 6 where Wally gets kicked out of Keystone and has to start superheroing somewhere in California. My thought is Barry, you're the fastest man alive. You can't vacation and also just do this as well. But it's still funny, and it's even more funny because Wally's just yeah, that's good. I have the week off from school anyway, conveniently.
All right, so that was Flash 130. Cool little capsule overall. The next retro book we will reveal at the end of the show. I'm kind of slurring my words for some reason. Getting into the new books. First off, we're going to do some indies and a debut issue, Berserker Unbound #1, published by Dark Horse. This is Jeff Lemire writing and Mike Diodato on art, and colors by Frank Martin, who I want to call particular attention to. So basically, we have a self-serious and brutal barbarian from Fantasyland. He has a fucked up backstory. They introduce his backstory in the beginning. He has a slain family, a wife and daughter, and he's, edgelord who's been through endless fighting. And Diodato really kills it on some of these panels. There's tons of action with this character, whose name I think is also Berserker. He's like mowing down or taking on a bunch of dudes. And Frank Martin really complements really well with a very digital style coloring. He, like, the effects that he can use, you can show kicked up sand, the fires, the smoke, splatters of blood. But there's also some scenes where there's like this weird pixelation effect, which I don't really know how I feel about that. And Berserker runs away from battle into a cave, and he's transported to Central Park, or its equivalent, and found by a homeless man. And 3/4 of this book is the backstory, and technically the end is still set up for like the actual premise of the story going forward. So I have no idea where this is going. And to be honest, Lemire's script itself didn't impress me at all. But Diodato and Martin's art is fantastic. And on the other note is, as far as the actual premise of this, I already don't remember really how Marvel integrated Conan. He was thrown straight in, and I don't think he really had time at all to react during No Road Home. None of us are reading Savage Avengers, so I don't know how it's dealt with there. So I don't know that Conan ever really got the chance to be like, whoa, why am I in this New York City with all these machines and stuff? I assume they have tackled that. But also this exact same story of the barbarian trapped in New York, or Analog, was done in a Red Sonja run by Amy Chu in 2016 for like 25 issues. So it's still cool that it's, an indie book and Lemire and Diodato, but this is not a remotely novel situation. I don't think either of you read this, so that's Berserker Unbound.
I flipped through it, and Mike Diodato's art is amazing as always. I've always been a big fan of Diodato, but it looks like it's kind of back to his Dark Avengers self here, where it looks just amazingly crisp and great, especially with the colors and the new inking here.
Yeah, the art is definitely worth checking out. But if that's not compelling enough for you, I would wait and see how people react, including possibly myself, to future issues, and see whether the story is really worth bothering with.
So yeah, going over to Boom Studios, Jordi Belair and David Lopez on Buffy the Vampire Slayer #7. We ended the last arc with Xander getting half a soul back. He's kind of cured of being a vampire, but he's like kind of a half vampire now. Basically, he has to bring blood in a thermos for lunch. That's where he's at now. But the whole kind of fallout from the last arc is Willow gave up half her soul to save Xander, and she's wondering what half of her soul did she give up, as her grades are falling. She can't really sleep anymore. She's kind of perpetually just awake and not really there.
It sounds like me.
Yeah, exactly. How Vince operates on a normal day-to-day basis. But she kind of has a fight within herself with the manifestation, which I'm going to call it Dark Willow because it reminds me a lot of Dark Willow from like the show. But at the end of it, she has like a talk with Xander, and she's like, "No, you ended up saving me, and you're like one of the best people and best friends I have." And they kind of make peace with it, and the issue ends with that. That's how it goes, and we'll see what happens. As they're all still friends, and they're kind of adjusting to this new life now, being friends with a vampire slayer and with Buffy. The next issue, I believe, Angel's going to show up, so it'll be the first time he shows up proper in the Buffy book. But I noticed in the back matter of this, they have an ad for both series are going to kind of converge with Drusilla being set up as the big bad. So we're getting a crossover event called Hellmouth, which it looks like Joss is coming back to write some of it because his name is being listed with Belair and who's the writer of Angel right now?
Brian Hill.
Yeah, Brian Hill. Yeah, it looks like they're both being listed. All three of them are being listed on kind of at least on the Hellmouth issues. So that's kind of neat to see Joss coming back in at least some sort of writing capacity. But this is the prelude to Hellmouth crossover is going to start in Angel number 5, and it's going to go all the way through February. So I don't know how I feel initially here about a crossover that's going to take this long, but I'm enjoying these books so far, and I think it's, like I still say, it's a fun, fresh take on a property I was a fan of years ago, and it's fun to go back and see what's different about it now, and kind of updating it to a more modern setting. That the show was like completely out of touch. I mean, if you were to go back and watch the early seasons, it's really early, like it's 90s. But I'm enjoying this. I thought it was a pretty good issue, delving with Willow and Xander. Buffy kind of only shows up in the background in kind of a dream sequence. So I thought this was a good, like, decompressing issue. Belair kind of continually impresses me with how well of a voice she has for all these characters. She very clearly, I think, was a fan of the show when it was on, and she definitely has her knowledge of all the characters in this universe. And she's kind of like, I've already been a fan of her in other aspects of comics, but she's been kind of like, I've enjoyed her writing very much on this book.
Cool.
Nice.
Another Image book. Well, the Image book. Well, I'm a mess today. Coffin Bound number 1. Coffin Bound number 1 is from Dan Watters and Danny, which I guess is and I think it's a woman. I'm pretty sure it's a woman. It might be a dude, but this artist goes by a mononym, Danny. And Dan Watters, the writer, is a member of White Noise, which is a collective of rising British writers, and that includes Ram V, Alex Packnadel, and Ryan O'Sullivan. Watters also writes Lucifer for DC / no longer exists in Vertigo, and he co-writes House of Whispers for the Sandman line, which should be called Vertigo. And Ram V did that Just League Dark annual, which I was pretty positive about last issue.
What was your pick of the week last time?
Yeah, for me, yeah. And all of them have indie books at Image, or they have some kind of deal, and also as the whole collective has some kind of deal with Vault. And over there, Packnadel's Friendo and Ram V's These Savage Shores are some of the best reviewed books of the past year or two. So Coffin Bound itself, we open, our main character is this goth chick in fishnets named Izzy. She's living somewhere in the desert, and she's approached by a vulture skeleton in a cage on top of a metal body. And it's not clear if this thing is truly sentient, if it's in her head. There's no explanation for it. Then some guys roll up to shoot up her place, and there's a warning of the Earth Eater. And we get a page scene of the Earth Eater basically narrating what he's about. And he's a dude who wears a gimp mask, and he eats dirt.
So much like yourself.
Yeah, and the Earth Eater is coming after Izzy. So her plan is she's somehow going to retrace her steps and erase all existence of herself. And then we get an interlude at a strip club scene where this woman, at first she's just like on the pole and she starts taking off her clothes, and then she rips off her flesh, just like opening her chest cavity, and you just see all her muscles and blood. and
We've
then
all been there.
she takes off her face, and I think there's a panel which is a clear death of the family homage, which is very strange because it's the exact same angle of holding up the face, over her own eyes and stuff. And she does this because I guess there are some really screwed up people who get off on it, but we're still really weird. So they're like creeped out at the end when they hand over the cash, and it's sort of explained. It's like hinted that she's like really drugged up, but she seemed totally fine cognitively. But obviously, she's not in writhing in pain from ripping off all of her chest. And somehow they get bandaged up, and there's probably another kind of chemical or drug involved where they're able to regrow their skin, because it's implied that these strippers do this over and over. And I guess the owner of this club or someone involved with this club, he's the one who put the contract on Izzy to kill her, but he's like in love with Izzy. It's like a muse situation. But so he argues that poetry demanded her death, so he wants to rescind the contract, track down Earth Eater to do so, and Earth Eater causes the ground to have a little quake and swallow him up. So he's still after Izzy.
So Earth Eater got ate by Earth.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Earth Eater. And in the end, Izzy meets up with someone named Cassandra, and it's like some Native American chick, and they make out. And that's how the issue ends. I don't really know what this is. I don't know what's going on. Half these characters are very confusing. There's some very strange ideas and imagery. It's pretty wild. I think Waters very much this, and I think this is the first thing I've ever read from Dan Waters, very much seems to be in the lineage of Warren Ellis, where there's a bit of nonsense speak. Like even the normal characters, like they'll say a sentence, and I'm like, why the hell did you say it that way? Like Izzy has to, like, her car breaks down for a second, so she has to mess with the engine, and she says something like, the petroleum sings once more or something. I'm like, why the fuck are you saying? But it all has like a little bit of a nice rhythm to it in that like nonsense speak way. And Danny's art really is the standout here. It's stunning. It's truly horrifying in that strip club scene, while Izzy is like perfect on model goth GF. Then Danny uses like literally just lines to depict smoke and fire, just do like squiggles, and it's just like cartoon in a cartoony way. It's just conveyed perfectly. She also a bunch of panels use silhouettes, which she's really really good at. The art, I really love the art in this book. Otherwise, I have no idea what the hell is happening, but it's compelling and weird enough that I think I'm going to keep going. In fact, I think it might be my pick of the week. No, it's not. It's the runner-up. It's some runner-up. I really enjoyed it.
I would have been very surprised if that was a pick of the week.
It's pretty close, but I'm going to keep going with it. But even so, tentatively on the first issue, I would recommend this.
Speaking of runner-up picks of the week, here's mine. No One Left to Fight number 2. Yeah, Mike didn't like this at all, but I did.
I'm dropping this book, but
I don't care. No One Left to Fight. It's the kind of Dragon Ball Z inspired book from Dark Horse by Aubrey Sitterson and Fico Osio. Last issue, we left off with the Goku and Vegeta archetypes, respectively Vale and Timur, about to get into a fight in the backyard. That fight we pick up with right here, and it literally just ends right away. The Bulma character, Krista, I think is her name, kind of breaks it up and is like, what the hell, you two are grown adults, why are you acting like this? And I don't remember if it was explicitly stated in the last issue, but the reason that Vale is like at the house is because they're about to go on like a journey, I guess kind of through Vale's life leading up to the big fight, which was the his like defining hero moment where he became like hero of the world or whatever. And so that's why he's there, because they're about to leave for that. One of the things that happens is that as they're about to leave, there's a huge crowd outside of the house because they found out that Vale's there. And this was a kind of interesting thing to me. Just it's nice to see this diverge a bit more and more from Dragon Ball Z and like become its own thing and not have me constantly just comparing it to that because in this Vale is like recognized by the people, unlike Goku, who like anyone on Earth would look, anyone in Dragon Ball Z would look at Goku and just think, who the hell's this farmer guy? And so that was kind of nice. They go at this point to an orphanage, which is also a dojo, which is kind of like the Kame Island and has its own master Roshi, who is, I think it's Sister Harga. Yeah, that was the name, Harga, I believe. Who trained Vale and Timur, but we learned later on in this issue that Timur left at some point to find a better teacher, and that there is still a lot of bad blood between Harga and Timur. We're also introduced to Winda, who I don't really know if there is like a direct translation of this character necessarily, but she seems to be fairly smitten with Vale, who just does not notice her whatsoever. From there, it's a lot of like history and world building, which I really appreciated. It's what I liked most about this issue. We get a lot more looks into what this world is, how it came to be what it is, and you get a lot of like interpersonal dynamics, I feel like, from here. I forgot to mention it, but on their drive over from whatever city to this orphanage dojo, whatever the hell, you get like a quick like 2 panels of what I'm assuming is going to be a villain. He looks menacing and maybe a bit like a rabbit. There's rabbit people in this world, I think. From there, not too much else happens in this issue. It, like I said, it's mostly kind of history. There is another like weird flashback or like dream sequence. I'm not really sure who's having it, if it's Harga or Timur, but it's when they're fighting verbally, that is. And it's like a possible future where Winda and Vale like settle down. Vale starts teaching, has some kids, yada yada yada. And then we end with Winda kind of sneaking into Vale's room at night and in some sexy clothing and being like, "We could be more." Hint, hint. And that's where we leave off. So, like I said, personally, I like this issue better than the first one. I'm really liking it, having, fleshing out its world more, like I already said, and getting more into the characters and how they interact with each other. Art is still great. Colors are awesome. I'm really digging the aesthetic of the book so far, and I'll definitely be keeping up with this.
All right. Well, my views are the everything Dan said, the opposite of. I'm also going to refute what you say about Goku, where people in the world of Dragon Ball Z don't care about him because they recognize him from as a kid that beat Piccolo later when he's fighting Cell and Buu. So people do recognize who he is. So for me, it's so heavy on this is Dragon Ball Z and so hard wants to be something different, but to me doesn't differentiate itself enough at all, to the point where if I'm constantly in the back of my head, I was like, I'd rather just go watch Dragon Ball Z. That's the problem for me.
Mm.
It's very much like it's kind of like the Dollar General version of Dragon Ball Z for me, where we're just dropped in, and because of my knowledge of this previous property, I'm supposed to understand these characters with some slight tweaks here. I don't think there's been enough done to really differentiate itself from what it's trying to be, and single itself out after 2 issues where the plot really hasn't moved anywhere. Now I understand that like we'll have episodes of Dragon Ball Z where there's just 2 energy balls colliding for 35 minutes, but the plot needs to move, and we have not even been introduced to like a proper villain by issue 2 here. And I think with a series like this that's going to draw heavy inspiration, you need to hit the ground running very fast to hold at least my attention. Now for Dan, it didn't need to do that. Which, if you like this, great. To me, it's just too similar, and I don't think the world. I disagree. I don't even think the world's built up far enough. Like everything I've seen here is almost a trope, and it's not done in a way that's very interesting to me. Like, okay, Vale is very clearly a Jesus type figure to these people. It's um. I got nothing bad to say about the art though. The art and the colors are fantastic. I really wanted to like this, but after 2 issues and reading a bunch of books, and with books needing to constantly kind of place themselves, at least with me, to justify me to keep reading on, maybe it hasn't done it after 2 issues. But I'll keep talking to you. If the first arc it turns around, I'll maybe come back and trade and pick it up again. But for now, I've kind of dropped it. I wanted to like it, but it was almost one of the worst books I read this week, just in terms of not differentiating itself enough to kind of go on its own path.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. And the only thing I could maybe say to that, not even trying to like change your mind or anything, but and I can't get a peek into their minds or whatever, but it might just be like the creators trying to do the opposite of what they've done with you and trying to bring people in by having this familiarity before they really start to diverge. But we just won't know
Well,
until
if you go on
we
like
see
Dark
a lot
Horse,
more.
like, it's very much clear. Like it says like an asterisk, like for fans of Dragon Ball Z and Fight manga
Yeah,
is what's on it. Like it's very clearly drilling into your head. That's what it is.
yeah.
But yeah, Sea of Stars. What was that like this week?
Um, in my opinion, it was a little bit worse than the first issue.
Ooh,
Not necessarily worse. It's just to me, it wasn't quite as interesting. In the last issue, there was the father and son. Father's a trucker. He brought his son on the whatever haul he was doing because, as we find out in this issue, the mom died like 3 weeks ago, and I guess he just doesn't have anyone else to watch the son while he goes on these trips. So the last issue mostly focused on the son. This one almost exclusively focuses on the dad, Gil, I believe. And also, just before I forget, CSR's #2 from Image, written by Jason Aaron and Dennis Hallam, art from Stephen Green, and color by Rico Renzi. So, like I said, it's focusing on the dad, Gil. It flashbacks to right when the giant space whale, whatever the hell thing, ate the freighter he was driving, and how he got out of there, and kind of this is kind of his like in it just tells the story of how he got from being eaten to, I think in the last issue we left off with him getting faced down by monkeys, space monkeys, of course, and it goes a little bit beyond that. We get some. It's mostly just him being low on life support and fuel and stuff like that, and trying to get to somewhere where he can find his son, Caden. He eventually, in what I think is like a kind of cool scene, if nothing else, just for like the interesting idea of this technology that it is. After he kills all the monkeys, he sets down for like a life support thing, and there's this little like pod thing. I don't know what it is, like if it's a part of his suit or if it's like the helmet or something, but it like makes a little dome around him that is habitable, and I think that's just like a cool like sci-fi invention kind of thing.
It's basically like a space tent.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's really cool. He's talking to his helmet the whole time he's under there trying to find, like I said, either a way to get to his son or a way to get to something to then get to his son. He eventually is mostly just kind of like I imagine he's like a grumbling kind of man at this point. He's just like, I could go do the thing and die in a fire in the sun. And he does that for like 3 different things. And then they finally find a derelict freighter. And he uses the very last of his life support and fuel to get there. And it doesn't take him all the way. So he basically falls unconscious and prays that when he hopefully hits the side of the ship, he'll wake up, be able to grab hold of something and get inside. Obviously, he does because it's a comic book and we need plot. So this ship. You get I don't want to say like alien vibes from it, but take any sci-fi movie where you find a spaceship that hasn't been used or heard of in like however many years, and it's the basic vibe you get. There's this weird plant vine thing going on everywhere, and he eventually finds like a giant like Venus flytrap thing that tries to eat him. Luckily, because it's a plant, its mobility is pretty bad, and the plant can't get to him. But there is a security bot. I don't really know how to pronounce the name. I think it's KYL or something. He just calls it Kyle the Cop Bot. So we're just gonna go with that. Kyle the Cop Bot is a kind of interesting character that is just very dead set on having this intruder leave. But he shocks the dad. Dad starts to get eaten by a plant, eventually escapes, accidentally initiates hyperdrive, and he's like, "Oh shit, hyperdrive without shields, we're gonna die," and tries to explain this to a robot, which I think was a kind of funny scene because the robot is just like, "You have 1 second to get off this ship before I hurt you," and this is where we leave off the tale of Gil the dad, and for about a page or two, we see the son. He is frolicking out in space with his friend, the space monkey, and the space whale. Yes, I think they actually call themselves that or something similar.
No,
And,
actually, the thing that totally looks like a whale gets referred to as fish.
yeah, that's right. Sorry, it is fish. But so he's playing with them. Everyone is still confused as to why he does the things that he does. And then the final page is just a shot of what I'm assuming is going to be the villain or some sort of antagonist. He has a cool firebird or something on his hand, but he or Sunhawk even, and he says that they finally found the missing god of the Zaztecs. Yes, that's Aztecs with two Z's in front of it. I don't remember if Zaztec was mentioned in the first issue. I think it was because it sounded kind of familiar. But so I'm assuming we're gonna have some sort of weird space gods, which I'm definitely down for. Just to give some overall thoughts on this, I think we mentioned it earlier, but the art and the colors, like especially for all the space scenes, are just gorgeous. And something else that just stood out to me is the lettering on this. I'll have to give me a second to figure out who lettered it, but lettering is one of those things once I notice it and it being good in a comic, it's really just increases the quality to me. Just like gives everyone like their own unique voice in a way and differentiates people better. Letterer he's also the designer apparently, Jared K. Fletcher.
Yeah, I liked pretty much some of the stuff that you said, and I liked the father has like this weird cavalier sense of humor when he's in these totally fucked up situations. I mean, long term, the fucked up situation of being separated from his kid out in space, and even and it's hard to really gauge whether it's like a nihilistic, like, hey, everything's totally fucked, so why not, or if this is just like his sense of humor. But that makes the story a lot more entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
And Caden is really entertaining too, where he's just, I mean, we don't get, as you said, we don't get a ton of him in this issue, but he's just like swimming around space and finds it really fun. I'm sure he realizes, hey, we don't get a line from him in this issue, but we know that he knows he's separated from his dad. I'm sure that is still in the back of his mind for freaking him out. But both of them are just like, well, got to get back to each other. And, well, Caden's not really immediately concerned with that. Also, there's a Jason Latour reference in here.
Oh, right.
Latour.
The Latour Quadrant. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Co-creator artist with Aaron on Southern Bastards and creator of Spider-Gwen. Yeah, I think it's still a really fun series.
Yeah, I agree.
Mike, you didn't read this, right?
I did not. I didn't have the time.
Moving into Section 0, number 5 from Image Comics. I just removed myself from the stream. Section 0, number 5. The story starts in 2002 with a ragtag Section 0 team looking for the Gator Man in the swamp. And our main character for most of this, Sam Wildman, he's kind of going crazy searching for Tina Challenger, former leader of the team, kind of legacy hero and former romantic partner of his. He forces one of his old friends to use some powers in a traumatic way. He can like touch objects and sense like where they've been and things like that. But I guess it hurts him, and so he does like when clowns have those like shock things in their hands. He basically does that with like an object, forces him to read it. So he finds a ring of fire, which summons a humongous Venus flytrap. So there's the connection between these two issues. So that's what's been killing all these hogs and stuff, the 30 to 50 wild hogs, not the Gator Man. And the traumatic powers guy, he ends up dying. And they don't show the battle scene with the Venus flytrap. It's kind of like, next page, the thing's dead or gone, and everyone's healing. And then we flash forward to 2017. So this series, especially as like we got into like the third or fourth issue or something, I don't remember when, it's been jumping between decades and stuff. So in 2017, we start with these kids being attacked by zombie versions of their mothers. And so they draw the zombies over to a trap, and it's like some Walking Dead type scenario, but actually it's all role play because these parents are super paranoid or something, so they're teaching their kids what to do in case of a zombie apocalypse. And then the ghost soldiers come out of nowhere, and they're like, hey, one of our guys died like 15 years ago, but we are always reincarnating, which connects to another issue we'll talk about in this episode. We reincarnate into different bodies, and we're pretty sure our buddy is somewhere over here. And it turns out one of these kids is the reincarnated version of one of these ghost soldiers. So they just like abduct this child, and the parents are like, wow, we're so honored. And to our main character, Section Zero in 2017, Sam, the main character, is somehow now Sargasso, the like amphibian monster guy. It's like a curse that passes along. And then the end of the issue, they run into the Loch Ness monster, which will take us to the next issue. And I think this is only supposed to be 6 issues. I don't even know, because I think it's a miniseries, and then there's like a prequel miniseries, which was kickstarted as well. And maybe they're going to split that up and put it to the direct market. I don't know. I don't know. I have the same thoughts on this issue as always. It's kind of an attainable read in a very like pulled out of the early 90s Carl Kiesel, Tom Grummett way. And if that sounds interesting to you, and it's also like a Challenges of the Unknown, Jack Kirby kind of a little bit of vibes, if that sounds interesting, you might like this, or it's totally trash. Your mileage may vary.
Speaking of books where your mileage may vary, we're going to talk about Tom King's Batman number 76. Or as I like to call it, what are comic book fans complaining about this week?
Well, I'm complaining about the cover.
Okay, you're complaining about the state of comic covers in 2019.
That's true, but this cover shows a very epic image of Bane grabbing Batman and like throwing him into the ground where he's about to break his back. Bane does not appear in this issue once, I believe.
He shows up on the last page.
Okay, last page. And I don't think, is he even in costume? I don't know.
Yeah, he's in costume.
But he's like sitting, okay, Bane shows up, barely. Batman, by technicality, is
actually
not
no, I'm wrong. It's Flashpoint Batman on the last page. Bane didn't show up at all. You're right.
Yeah, Bane's not here at all. And depending on what kind of technicality you want to go with, Batman either does show up in a different way, or doesn't show up, because Bruce Wayne is
drugged on a couch. He's out of commission.
Bruce Wayne is here, but he's not Batman at all, and he's not even conscious. And another version of Batman shows up, but this cover does not remotely represent anything that happens in this issue, which is a little annoying because I expect that less from Marvel and DC.
Well, like you said, that was bad. When we get to DC's number 4, it's a lot worse. But Batman number 76, we open with a splash page of Catwoman robbing some stuff, but immediately we go back to Gotham. Captain Atom is showing up to try to contain this situation that's now happening in Gotham City, as basically because everything's fine and under control. No one wants to touch it or really go anywhere near it. If a superhero is shown up going there, they've broken the law and they'll immediately be taken into custody. Also, if any member of the Bat family shows up in Gotham, they're going to kill Alfred outright because Alfred's trapped in Wayne Manor with Thomas Wayne and Bane. But most of this issue features around Gotham Girl beating the snot out of Captain Atom, which Captain Atom only exists to get the crap beaten out of him today to put over a new younger talent. So, and then that was the big thing people complained about this week was how can Gotham Girl beat Captain Atom? Well, Gotham beat the entire Justice League and it killed him. So even though Gotham Girl won, this took literal years off her life. In the meantime, Tweedledum, Tweedledee, and the Scarecrow are trying to run away from Flashpoint Batman and not get taken over control by Psycho Pirate. So it's the first time we've seen Kite Man in a while, and Kite Man's kind of been in the background of all of Tom King's Batman. And he's had and he gets some really fun moments with Scarecrow here. As Scarecrow's kind of preying on Kite Man's fear. And Selina is Catwoman in Paris. That's kind of where they're stationed out hiding. She's stealing a very famous painting, the Lacemaker Vermeer. Vince, do you know of this painting?
No,
I don't either. But basically, she's
vaguely familiar for some reason.
Okay, but she's stealing paintings and stuff to sell, kind of black market wise, to get medical supplies for Bruce because Bruce has been drugged, which would explain why he was able to be taken out so easily in the last issue. So she's kind of nursing Batman back to health, knowing that eventually they're going to have to go back to Gotham. Tim Drake shows up in a hospital questioning Captain Atom, trying to get information from him, and he kind of has a heart-to-heart moment with Damian as they're like, we don't know how to go about this because we can't get into the city. Batman's not around. Nightwing's is Rick Grayson now. So they're both kind of on their own operating. How do I get in here? But Damian kind of has this moment of when have we ever done what the villain says? And Tim's right, as Bane did break Batman, but they're kind of left to their own devices of what do we do? They don't know yet. As Flashpoint Batman eventually does reach Kite Man and Scarecrow, and him and Gotham Girl kind of look unbeatable at this moment, where we don't know what our heroes are going to do. We're all kind of sidelined, waiting to see how this is all going to come together. I enjoyed this. I thought Tony Daniels' art has been really stellar in the series so far. I thought the final splash page, Flashpoint Batman's face looks a little like Golem-y, but other than that, I think his art looks fine. I know, Vince, you don't like the way he drew Captain Atom, like a kind of a slim version of Captain Atom, but I thought it was fine. I thought Tim and Damian both looked good. I thought he drew Catwoman well, even though I'm not the biggest fan of this new costume with the underarms exposed. It's just a very weird design, I feel. But what'd you think of the issue of the series that's ruining Batman forever?
Yeah, I have nitpicks with Captain Atom's design. He's a little skinny, and they've been doing this weird thing where he has like a radioactive wisp on his head, and I think we saw that in Heroes of Crisis.
Yeah, a little bit.
I think I complained about it there or nitpicked about it. But whatever. This is what he's used for. That's fine. Does Thomas Wayne kill? Well, do Tweedledee and Tweedledum die in this issue?
I'm not entirely sure, but I enjoyed the moment with Scarecrow spraying fear gas in their faces to make them fear of falling as they're falling.
Well, one of them gets shot by Thomas Wayne, and I don't remember precisely where. It seemed in the moment like it could have been a kill shot, and then the other gets dropped from however high, holding on to Kite Man. So unless Thomas Wayne like caught him during the fall, he probably fucking broke all his bones and may as well be dead. Right. So
it seems at least that Thomas Wayne is at least incapacitating them in some way and kind of dragging them to Psycho Pirate.
Yeah. I like Scarecrow. He's kind of like a weird, kinky bastard. Like when Thomas Wayne finally shows up, Scarecrow, he's like, "You want it the easy way or the hard way?" and Scarecrow's like the hard way and take it slow or something like that. He said something weird. I think Tony Daniel draws Tim and Damian like way too similarly. I would honestly, in the scene with Captain Atom in the hospital, I had no idea which Robin he was talking to.
Oh, I knew it was Tim because of the hair and the Robin logo.
I mean, I don't read a ton of the like Damien's appearances and Tim's appearances enough to differentiate the costumes that much right now.
Damien also has a green mask and Tim has a black mask.
Okay. And then in the scene together, it's like, oh, one's taller. But I don't know. I've already said I'm kind of iffy on this entire status quo and just Thomas Wayne Batman existing and being in this universe in the first place. But I think this issue was good. And to your other art comments, this issue has like 3 inkers, including Daniel himself. So it didn't like stand out like a sore thumb, but there is some inconsistency here. And the last page, that splash page, which I think in some sense is one of the best pages in the book, but in some sense is also not.
Yeah, I think Gotham Girl looks good, but Flashpoint Batman looks kind of meh.
It's something about the inking. Actually, I'm almost the other way. Gotham Girl, if you look at like her hair and her facial features, she almost has like a image, like early Image era-esque look to her hair and everything. It reminds me just a tiny bit of like a Liefeld or Portaccio kind of line, which granted, I mean, Tony Daniels somewhat, his early career somewhat from that era with X-Force.
Yeah, I think Tony Daniels' art took a little bit of a hit for me, taste-wise, when he started inking himself. And that I think that started when he started doing Detective Comics, or maybe midway through his Batman run when before the New 52, because I always the best his art looked was R.I.P. with Morrison writing Batman. But it's kind of like I definitely like it now. It took a little bit of an adjustment period for me to get used to. But
well, I was happy to not have recitations of poetry or obscure folklore in this issue. So that's a plus.
Anywho, let's go to DC's number 4. So we mentioned baiting covers. DC's number 4 has Zombie Superman, Zombie Wonder Woman, and Zombie Batman in the background. Is Sergeant Rock's right in the center of the issue, kind of leading a resistance. Sergeant Rock doesn't show up in this issue once, or is he even mentioned?
Are you sure all these covers haven't been bullshit?
All these covers are bullshit. They've all been bullshit.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the point. I mean, Marvel Zombies basically established that trend with all the Arthur Sidham like homage zombie covers and shit.
But yeah, DC's number 4. I'm still pleasantly enjoying this in a weird, stupid, fun way that I'm really surprised that I still am. Captain Atom gets turned into one of the corrupted in this because the Atom was corrupted. And they had the Atom go down microscopic and snuck inside Captain Atom's heart and corrupts him from inside. As Captain Atom was kind of running missions for Amanda Waller with the Suicide Squad. If they were kind of investigating one of the corrupted themselves, and this triggers an explosion that wipes out Washington, D.C., and by the end of this issue reaches all the way down to Metropolis. So kind of like the whole east coast of the D.C. universe's United States is just absolutely obliterated by the end of this. But cut back to Superman and all the rest of the allies. Superman's kind of pushing himself and wanting to see as much help he can do and be anywhere. And they're like, no, you kind of got to stay here because we can't risk you seeing a screen and get corrupted. And it's revealed that Superman is fine, been using his X-ray vision the whole time, so he can't see the television right now. I thought that was a really cool reveal where that's how Superman's been able to stop himself from being corrupted. But they managed to get a radio working where they send out a call to the rest of the heroes. So we see the Flashes come in now, Wonder Woman, Mara team up, Lex Luthor, and I think that's Mercy with her, they show up as they have to fight Giganta, who's attacking Metropolis. Ivy comes and helps out Harley Quinn, as she was like left in a back alley to fend for herself from their now corrupted birds of prey. But as they're fighting, as the rest of the heroes are all fighting Giganta, Cyborg just shows up and blasts her in the head. So we get this just giant hole in the head of her. Alfred shows up on the roof of Metropolis to deliver a bat suit to Damian, and as that's Batman's final gift to him, as we saw Batman die in issue 2. But and then a casualty of war in this one is Hawk Girl. She kind of got burned up in the air from one of the explosions. But like I said, the Superman and Wonder Woman go to try to contain the nuclear blast that's happening, and it looks like everyone kind of just got obliterated. So that has to be a clear fake out, because this is, I think, is 9 issues long. So we'll see what happens in the next issue. But kind of a lot of ramping up consequences here as DC rolls right onward. I still like the art. I'm still down with it. Is for weird as a concept. Look, Tom Taylor can make an alternate Elseworld story engaging in his own way, I guess, with his work on the Injustice books, because people love those. But I'm down for this. It's not always my cup of tea, but it hasn't been the worst thing in the world. I'll say that.
All right, on to just such a goddamn amazing book. God, I love this issue. So this is Doom Patrol: Weight of the Worlds #2. It is written by Gerard Way with assists from Jeremy Lambert. And if I read the credits page right, arts, colors, and letters, pencils and inks, that is, art-wise, is by James Harvey, which the fact that he did all of that is kind of crazy. There's an awesome Nick Barrington, huh?
He's like Bob Q.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. Like I'm pretty sure I read that right, and that's just insane to me that basically 3 people made this book. But first off, the cover by Nick Darrington is just amazing. It's the Doom Patrol on red carpet. I guess kind of like the preceding 2 issues we've talked about. This has nothing to do with the issue itself, but who cares? It's the Doom Patrol, and at least it's not like making you think something weird. I don't know. But last issue we left off with Cliff in human form driving off a cliff. I think I made that pun last time. And
you did.
Obviously enough, we start off here where Cliff is Robot Man again. And there's just a beautiful, beautiful splash page that just really captures his immediate depression at being back in a robot again. And it's great. From there, we found out that Keeg, the negative spirit, made this new body for him. And he's also installed this sort of upgrade system, basically exactly like a video game, where as Cliff does, heroic acts or whatever, he unlocks new powers, basically. So the tutorial here is, hey, go water that plant, and he gets boots out of it, like steel shoes or something. From there, we found out that Keeg has been out of Larry for a long time, and he actually can't go back into Larry because from the first Gerard Way Doom Patrol series, anytime Larry Trainer lets the negative spirit loose, he experiences a full lifetime in between while ever the negative spirit is doing something. And for a brief period of time, I think it was in the last issue, it's revealed that these lives start getting more and more dark, and he gets depressed, so he adopts a dog, and he's great again. But now he has so much positive energy in him that the negative spirit actually can't inhabit the same body. And Larry, just out of the holes in his chest, just pops out 3 little, positive energy pods or something that start running around Dannyland. And so from here, it's a hard cut to Casey Brink and Fug, the weird little alien critter, playing with Joker and Harley dolls in a bathtub on Joker Island, trademark. And it was just it was fucking funny to me. It's really funny. From here, they learn that these positive energy egg, whatever things are on the loose, and they're going to try and find them. And we get what might be one of my favorite things I've seen in a while. And we get a map of Dannyland. and it is just a joy to read through. There's so much funny things in the tiny little descriptions for the various like quadrants of it, or like the individual specific buildings. I think one of them is like some trading like stock exchange place where two people have been selling each other the same clock for so long that it's become worth billions of dollars. And it's just, dumb, absurd shit like that I love about this series. And then from here, what's her name? Rita, who I think right now is the de facto leader of the Doom Patrol. I could be wrong on that. Kind of calls an emergency because they're going to go help with a space divorce. Yes, a space divorce. It is planets trying to get a divorce from each other. And it's really great. Not going to lie. I think I mentioned it last episode, where Cliff went to the nursing home to visit his mom and had to show his ID, and it said Cliff Steele Esquire, implying that he knew law. And oddly enough, at this divorce hearing, he says he's an attorney and offers to represent someone. And I just love that dumb, tiny little continuity in between these two issues. And it makes me really happy that stupid little throwaway ID card thing just actually meant something. From here, Lotion the Man Cat, who was skating and listening to metal, eats one of the positive energy eggs and kind of like goes all Zen Buddha. And he kind of comes in to fix everything with the space divorce. And there is a beautiful, beautiful page that is also incredibly uncomfortable, where Lotion the Man Cat is cuddling these two planets. And there's like text and stuff going up people's legs and stuff. I can't really describe it well, but it's really good, and it ends up fixing everything. The planets don't get a divorce, so their solar system and all their kids stay intact, and it's just really cool. But the final little bit of this is that Larry, because he's still so full of positive energy, whatever, becomes the positive man, kind of a reverse negative spirit. He glows white under his bandages, and this looks like it's going to be a quick little new status quo for him. So I am very, very interested to see where all of this goes and see what other tiny little details Gerard Way put down somewhere or had drawn, and see what's going to actually make even a tiny impact like it did here in future issues.
Sounds pretty fucking insane.
Yeah, I remember when I read the original Gerard Way run, the first 12 issues, and it might have been because I had just before that read Silver Age Doom Patrol and then the Morrison era Doom Patrol. But I feel like Gerard Way does a very good job of kind of mixing the two perfectly, where you have that like kind of zany, still lighthearted feel of the Silver Age, but you have the like what the fuck's going on, dark undertones and just absurd shit of the Morrison era, and it's just a great melding of the two.
Cool. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna probably pick up the whole Way run in collected edition at some point. Mm-hmm. It's just like the month to month and the insanity of these issues on their own. I'm like, it wasn't hitting me in the right spot.
Mm-hmm. Not that it's bad. I was clearly wowed by. I really, really liked the first issue, but I was just like, yeah, I'm going to need to sit down and just kind of soak it all in once it's over. I think it'll read much better that way.
Yeah, if nothing else, I think this was a great standalone issue. I'm kind of hoping that I know we're only 2 issues into Weight of the Worlds, but I kind of hope they continue with this almost like pseudo one shot every time, where you just kind of have like a different plot and like the loose plot threads connecting between like Larry's the positive man, Cliff is now Robot Man again, stuff like that. Cool.
All right. You got the Justice League.
I do have the Justice League. I get to talk even more. All right. Justice League 29. We're still in the year of the villain. Now we're in Dark Gifts instead of the Offer. So I guess things are paying out.
I think Dark Gifts started last week.
Could be. I wasn't here.
I still saw some books with the Offer on it, so yeah. I don't really know.
I fled the country, so I just kind of dropped out for a bit.
Did Lex Luthor offer you a dark gift in Canada?
No, but someone did offer me some weed on the street.
Wow.
It's legal there, so it was fine. The guy smoked in front of a cop.
They also have universal health care there. It's really better overall.
A little bit, yeah. All right, back to Justice League though. Not of America in this
Back
case.
to America.
Well, no, this isn't the Justice League of
No,
America.
it's
This is just the
Justice
Justice League.
Fuck.
That's why I said
You
make
almost
sure
had
you
it.
have the volume number actually right.
Yeah, that's right. Justice League Volume 1 is 1 through 6, or pre-JLI.
Yeah.
And then Volume 2 is, I think it jumps all the way to Jeff Johns and Jim Lee. And then Volume 3 was the Brian Hitch series before this. It adds up.
Math. Either way, this is a Justice Doom War prelude, aka Jarro's Tale. So, just in general, this book starts off with what I think is a kind of cool concept, and it's supposedly Starro's origin, where you have like the multiverse, and then there's the stuff outside of it. Cameras are hard. Outside of it, where things don't always behave the way you expect them to. And basically, he explains how on the planet that Starro came from, instead of Earth, where evolution happens and everything starts from like one creature and branches out, on this planet there were a ton of creatures already, and they just kind of kill each other in this kind of still survival of the fittest, but to see which is going to be the one creature left, which in this case is Starro. And from there, Jarro attacks the Legion of Doom. He has somehow found their base instead of, while the Justice League is still trying to figure it out. There's a quick recap of what I'm assuming is basically Justice League events since Metal. There's these like 7 negative forces or whatever, like the slow force as opposed to the speed force.
Yeah, that was
the ultra. Yeah,
that was released in No Justice, and then that carried over into the opening arcs with Snyder.
Yeah, so this issue has some nice recaps of stuff from that and kind of explaining where everything is at as we go into this Justice Doom War, which I think was very nice. Jarro continues to hold his own against the Legion of Doom, and he's doing a pretty good job when eventually the Justice League figures out where he was and goes to his aid. They unfortunately get turned into the Apex Predators, which is, as far as I can tell from this, just Martian plus human somehow equals best creature alive. I don't know. It's one of those things. But Jarro realizes he has to kind of like give in to himself and become Star the Conqueror to try and free the Justice League. And it's at this point that Batman realizes that Jarro has actually been controlling the Justice League and never actually found the Legion of Doom, and everything's been a hallucination. And the reason that Jarro did this was to, in his mind, he was protecting the Justice League. He was going to take them and go off to Starro homeworld, wherever, and keep them safe. But Batman, who he looks up to like a father, he actually calls him dad a few times, I think, which I think is awesome.
Batman needs another sidekick, Scott. Thanks.
Yeah. Hey, just so you know, in this issue, we find out definitively that Batman's favorite Robin is Jarro. I believe that's said.
Jarro says that, but
then it has to be true.
No, it's not.
You just don't like Jarro.
I don't not like Jarro. I just think he's annoying, and I think, why pair him with Batman? Pair him with Superman. Pair him with someone who doesn't have a 9 billion allies.
That's part of the joke.
Yeah, it's still funny, but Batman convinces him to let the Justice Leaguers do their own thing, and like he says some nice line about how villains are people that fear something and heroes are something that do something about fearing something along those lines. He hugs Tiny Jarro. It's honestly kind of weird looking at it right now.
Splash page of this week.
But it's just a heartwarming book in general. And then at the end, we find out that Lex and Brainiac and the Legion of Doom have a tentacle of the original Starro, and because they're all a hive mind, when Jarro connected to all of the Justice Leaguers, they were able to tap into Starro Prime and kind of like learn all of their, basically read the Justice League's minds. So now Legion of Doom knows all of their plans. And that is where we leave off for the Justice Doom War to begin in earnest. I'm assuming next issue.
Yeah, I really like this. I think Jarro's kind of hilarious. Throws a batarang and then pulls out a giant cannon out of his nowhere.
The bat plasma gun, I think it is.
Yeah, he shit talks on Lex's design, which is always funny in this moment because it's like, you know, Scott Snyder also did that. It's pretty cool. We are all Jarro. That's the big line here.
I do like Jarro's Robin suit. I think the fact that he has his own Robin suit and he carries around this oversized batarang is pretty hilarious. But in terms of ending an issue on a cliffhanger, I really like the cliffhanger. Like, that's kind of an old school cliffhanger for me. Like, oh, the Justice League are kind of shit out of luck when they're going to fight the Legion of Doom, as they know every one of their moves. But I liked it. Like I said, it's been a rough start with me on Justice League, but I think it's slowly gotten better, which I'm happy with.
Yeah, at least the issues I've read since like 2026 or so. I think this is, and it might just be because this is the first actual like start of an arc that I've read. But I really like this issue. I think it did a great job of explaining all the important stuff that you're going to need to know going into the rest of, I'm assuming, maybe Year of the Villain and also just this Justice Doom War. So I think it's a good start, jumping on point if you've been thinking about reading Justice League.
Yeah, and I like that the stakes feel pretty epic and grand on the scale for the Justice League as well.
Also, we get a straight up list of the offer characters in here. I think one of them is either obscured or there's nothing there and it doesn't matter. But Black Manta, I read that. That's in Aquaman, obviously. Captain Cold, we read that. That's in Flash. Mr. Freeze, that's in. That was in Detective.
That was the end of Detective.
Yeah.
Jericho, that has to be in Deathstroke. Lobo, I'm pretty sure that's Teen Titans. Oracle, I'm assuming that's Batgirl. And Red Hood is probably just Red Hood. And the Terribles is the Terrifics. So there's probably one or two that we haven't seen yet or are not listed here. But we've actually surprisingly read a good couple of them. And we will, if we stick with those series, we'll see where those go.
I mean, it seems that we're all on board at least through Justice Doom War.
Yeah, honestly, this issue kind of sold me on Year of the Villain. Like,
I think Year of the Villain is a fun concept, and I like that it's all kind of coming together. It felt like when they did the New 52, it was a lot more scatterbrained.
Yeah, that's actually what I'm saying. And to be fair, I didn't read every single Villains Month issue and all that shit, let alone even all of Forever Evil. But I feel like this is a more interesting premise to me than Forever Evil.
Right.
It's set up a lot better with Lex's plans and the cosmic angle and Lex's backstory angle and everything like that. But our next book is Lois Lane #2. Greg Rucka and Mike Perkins. This opens with various news personalities and gossip, rag people reacting to Superman and Lois's kiss, and they say that Clark Kent and Lois Lane have been married 12 years. So there's some important continuity, which is a surprisingly long time. Of course, this is kind of, sort of, technically pre-Crisis Superman, who was married in 96 or whatever. But that's kind of weird because, for comparison, Hickman, as we delved into 2 weeks ago, potentially seems to be claiming that it's been 10 years since Charles Xavier formed the X-Men in the first place. So the fact that Clark and Lois have been married 12 years, and who knows how long Clark was Superman before they got married, that's pretty interesting. Potentially shows kind of the difference in maturity of the heroes across companies, but maybe not, because in recent decades, DC has kind of tried to be more younger and less family and marriage oriented, but they've finally come around on that. It's all weird. Lois has a great joke. She says essentially she says journalism is as popular as dark side. And to try and clear up the whole Superman adultery mess, Clark offers to just reveal his identity to the public, get the heat off you. And she's like, nah. And he's like, well, what are you going to do? And she's like, I'm going to keep telling the truth. And it's like, except for that part. Montoya, did
he reveal to say that? I don't think he revealed his identity. His plan was just to go on a talk show with Superman and just kind of clear the air.
I don't know. Well, it's not clear. I thought he was just like straight up, hey, I'll reveal my identity as Clark Kent. I don't know. I guess that does seem very, very drastic. But maybe New 52 Lois should have thought of that. But we have a very quick scene, which I'm not 100% clear on, and it doesn't really matter, of Montoya as questioned in Russia, investigating a crime scene. Then she's back in the U.S., reporting to Lois, and they have some pretty good chemistry. Rukta touches on Montoya's sexuality in a totally subtle and natural way. They're hanging out, and he also for Mike Perkins' direction, they have clearly different aesthetics and everything like that. There's references to Gotham and her time there, everything. And then Lois stops some finance guy who she has some dirt on and wants some quotes to expose bigger things. And he says the words fake news, and then they're going to meet later because she's like, well, you can either give me a statement or I'll totally fuck you. There's some commentary about detention centers. I think this issue, it still has a lot of topical stuff, but it's less in your face than the first issue. And even the first issue, I was kind of like mostly okay with it and finding excuses for it. And then, and another example is they talk about press credentials being denied at the White House and stuff like that. And then when Lois goes to meet this finance guy and she has Montoya trailing her in case, someone pulls out a gun, Montoya tackles him, and the finance guy is killed, but it's not really sure if he was the target or if Lois was the target, or whether whoever the target was, what the goal was. And so that's the end. Someone's trying to cover up stuff, and I'm still not 100% sure what Lois is doing in this series, because it doesn't seem like it's not really like a 12-issue tie-in to Event Leviathan, where Lois is also trying to assist with researching, discovering, exposing Leviathan. I don't think
trying to figure out what happened to this Russian journalist who was killed under some shady circumstances. The whole scene in Russia was Montoya going to investigate the crime scene and learning that it wasn't a suicide like it was first reported. It definitely was a break-in, and people are being killed. So the whole thing is that this Russian journalist that Lois had kind of, I think it's implied that she definitely knew her and they had some back and forth, but she has under findings about kind of conspiracies that are going on, and Lois is kind of taking them up. So that's kind of the crux of finding out what this mystery is for Lois, at least.
The issue is good. Obviously, it's very different from the other Marvel and DC books we read. There is action, but you're not going to see Lois, jumping over a building. I think a lot of the journalism stuff is handled really well. Like Lois, especially when she initially approaches that her essentially target, she wants to use as a source and everything. When she initially approaches him, it really comes off like she's a hard-nosed journalist with some dirt, trying to get to the truth. And Perkins' art is pretty great. There's some scenes where I can't tell if he's using certain digital stuff or certain photo reference stuff. There's some stuff that kind of stands out, but overall it's
Did you think
really
she
good.
looked like Margot Kidder in a couple panels? I thought she did.
I'm not sure. The other, actually, on that note, the other thing I want to mention is she has a quick call with Perry, and this series, and I think Bendis has been doing this as well, but this series is really, really nailing in that Lois Lane fucking sucks at spelling. And I've always, to be honest, I've always found that kind of weird. But this series like kind of takes it in a slightly different angle where she really plays along with it, and like it's like a calling card. Whereas, like, you know, a shitty writer would be like, "Wow, Lois Lane can't spell. What an idiot." But it doesn't at all go there. She's like, "I'm such a good journalist. I don't fucking care. I have an editor."
The best part about it on the phone call with Perry is Perry White cannot like sit and edit it on a computer. He has to print it out with a red pen because there's so much of it. He has to keep track of it himself.
And Montoya is really great here too.
Dude, this again, is a book for Montoya, and it's great.
Yeah, we only get like we get like 2-3 pages of question, but so not a ton of question in this issue, but honestly, just as good, if not better, just having Montoya in her civilian gear.
Yeah.
But Vince, if there's not enough questions here, next it's too many questions.
I didn't read the issue, so I don't know.
Yeah, that's the.
I understood.
No, that's just the end thing. It's two as in two.
Okay.
I'm assuming Vic Sage is going to be coming.
Well, he's in Leviathan.
Yeah. The fact that it's two, the number two, and not just like too many questions, like I feel like it's kind of on the nose, but we'll see. Who knows? Maybe there's going to be a third question these days. Maybe it's Lois. You heard it here first, unless it's wrong, in which case you heard nothing.
All right, talk about Sinestro.
Oh God, it's back to me already. Oh no, panic.
The last one for a little
bit. Yeah, so Sinestro, Year of the Villain. This is from. It's just a one shot. This is by Mark Russell, a writer I very much enjoy reading work from, and it is drawn by, and I just apologize in advance, Yildare Sinar?
Yeah,
something unfortunately hard to pronounce, but
art was great.
Art was very good. It's an interesting concept. You get your typical Mark Russell kind of commenting on some social stuff, or maybe philosophical or metaphysical even. And basically the whole point of this, it's very self-contained. Sinestro, who has the UV lantern powers right now, is told by Lex that he has to go and kill these kind of like incursion. These paragons, they're called paragons, that are from another universe and are slowly just destroying every planet they come across, which is in Lex's network of defense or something like that. All the while, Sinestro is kind of musing on like the different reasons for serving, like following other people, stuff like that. And it's the entire theme of this whole issue. So basically, Sinestro gets to the first planet and attacks these paragons, these giant, I almost want to say like celestial, almost kind of esque.
Yeah, they're very almost, even in design too, they look celestial.
Yeah. They kind of like evoke that image in a way. He finds out they heal very quickly, and shortly thereafter, he figures out that inside each of these paragons is a just world of what he calls microns, who kind of are responsible for the upkeep of everything, and they live their life in like less than a second. So Sinestro, after failing once and having to talk to Luthor again, remembers, with the UV lantern ring, he can control consciousnesses or something weird. This is my first exposure to the UV lantern ring, so it's been a learning curve. But basically, he sends tiny Sinestros into one of the Paragon's bodies to basically try and go up to these microns and be like, "Hey, why do you serve this Paragon guy? Why don't you just do whatever you want?" And that kind of backfires on him. and he has this interesting little conversation with like the 4 or 5 tiny Sinestros that he sent out. And one of them says, I have an idea, because all he did instead of actually talking to people was just kind of observe, and observe specifically in like a nursery. And basically what happens the next time around is this one tiny Sinestro says, all right, just do this specific whatever treatment or whatever to every baby, and everyone lives, I think it's 0.2 seconds longer.
Yeah.
And just from that, the entire like Micron society basically goes from almost like 1940s America, where it's all just like work for the state, and it just goes into like, well, why do that when we can express ourselves and have music and culture and art and stuff like that? And they just stop serving the paragons, so they don't heal anymore. And then from there, Sinestro tells Lex that I did what you wanted, yada yada yada, and he keeps one alive. And from here, we figure out that Sinestro enslaves this paragon by more or less enslaving the Microns, kind of undoing what he did, where you had this almost 1950s America going into like a 60s, 70s, 80s America, even up to and now. You might even be able to say, and basically Sinestro, I guess at this point, like by their perception, the Microns centuries down the line is saying like, kids these days, they're weak. What did your ancestors do? Work till they died, nothing else. And like all of the older Microns are like, yeah, this Sinestro guy, I like him. Kids are weak. They should do stuff. And he like just reverses everything he's done. And it's interesting. And like I said, like the entire like theme of this issue is like, what does it mean to serve? Why do people serve? When is serving good? When is serving bad? And it's a very interesting read. I'd highly recommend it. I personally like the way Mark Russell wrote Sinestro in this. I think Sinestro has that right amount of apathy towards everyone else because he thinks he's better than everyone else, and it's just a good read in general. And like I think Mike said earlier, the art is very good.
I'm constantly amazed by the way in which Mark Russell is able to take these kind of political ideas of like and ideas on society today and work them in a comic book featuring like characters like Sinestro and the Wonder Twins, and then like he did I almost said the Fruity Pebbles, but no,
Flintstones.
the Flintstones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm constantly amazed how he makes it work too.
Oh yeah.
This is it's a clear showing of his views on society as a whole, in terms of what is the view and role of person in a society. But it works so well in terms of the way Sinestro goes about the way he carries himself, like you said, that I'm gonna just it's completely like Sinestro does have that belief that he is better and he is, but he's smart and he's cunning too. Like he was able to. Like even when he has that thing with Lex, he's like, he was like, I thought you were gonna. He's like, no, you said eliminate the threat. I did that, and I also brought you back another soldier for you to fight. So, like, kind of these great. I thought that was a great Sinestro moment. Also, a shout out here to. I know he's been in Justice League, on the team of the Injustice League, but it's kind of fun to see him back in his original costume, like the one again. He's been in the Sinestro Corps suit so long that I forgot how kind of a fun old costume look he has with the old black and blue suit.
Yeah, and I like the UV aura he gets around it too, like a light purple kind of thing.
It makes it shine a little bit, makes it pop a little bit. But yeah, the week, but definitely in my top 3 wheelhouse. I really, really enjoyed this.
Yeah, if I'm being honest, I think at least every book that I read from DC this week was great.
Yeah, I don't think there's a bad book.
And that concludes our DC section. As we move on to my pick of the week, Absolute carnage.
Ooh, I am very surprised you went with it. I almost went with it, but then I read Daredevil.
This is also most metal comic book out. Actually, I don't know. That's actually a pretty tight race too. Coffin Bound was a little close, and Jaro is pretty metal in a way.
Before we start talking about this, though, I do want to say Ryan Stegman gets like Iron Man of the month for this because he drew all 60 pages of this.
Yeah, and I think they've already. I think they, the classic Marvel event thing where I think they tacked on another issue to the series already, and I think it's going to be 5-6 issues. I don't know if they're all going to be this length. That could be a first issue thing.
I think it's a first issue thing.
I know he took a break. I know the Venom series I think has been a little like not rocky in a bad way, but like it's been a little iffy. I think there was like a 2-issue fill-in by someone. Like I think the War of the Realms stuff might not have been by Cates, and then there was other stuff, and Stegman hasn't done certain issues, but he's working hard on this. This is Ryan Stegman on art, who we've mentioned. Frank Martin, who also colored Berserker Unbound, colors this, and writing by Donny Cates. And the idea, first of all, Eddie isn't connected to Venom as we start this issue, and that has to do with whatever's been going on in Venom, obviously. And he's explaining to this kid who is his son, but the kid thinks that they're brothers. He's explaining to him that if someone were to find all the people who've ever been attached to a symbiote on Earth and extract something from them, it's like the codex, then they will be able to talk to God, aka Null, and wake him up out of his prison of symbiotes, aka the planet of symbiotes. And then I guess even crazier shit goes down. And of course, that someone, the individual who's taken up this task is Carnage, the namesake of this series. And Eddie is also wanted, so they're kind of on the run. They end up getting pushed onto train tracks, and I guess at first it was obvious, but then it takes a second for Carnage to actually show up. They get pushed by Cletus, right?
Yes.
I believe so.
Okay.
But they're running from someone else.
They're pushed on the train tracks, and then Venom shows up out of nowhere, the symbiote, separately, rebonds with Eddie and saves them. It's not really clear if, stopping the train in the middle of tracks and just clearly destroying part of the front of it. It's not really clear if, there were some injuries on the train. Doesn't matter. Venom has a fight with Carnage, and he uses some kind of like fail-safe where he shocks himself, and then that travels to Carnage, and that basically burns off both of their symbiotes. So we know that Carnage is at least weak still to electricity somehow, though this kind of like cosmic enhanced version of Carnage, some of the other weaknesses don't apply to him, like the sound and fire weaknesses. And we know about the fire one because I read Web of Venom Funeral Pyre with Mania. And then Venom's crazy idea, Eddie's crazy idea, is to show up at Peter Parker's apartment. And I saw some people were kind of asking, like, hey, how does Eddie know Peter's identity? Because, like, I'm not sure if they ever, like, officially address that after Brand New Day, because Doctor Strange's stupid spell should have affected Eddie Brock. But it really doesn't matter because I believe the Venom symbiote, has attached to Peter Parker in the meantime. And so Eddie Brock knows who Spider-Man is because Venom does. And I think, Dan, if you want to quickly talk on this, off air, you said that you thought the opening of this issue was a little bit rougher. And I'm assuming you're talking this first chapter up until...
Yeah, up until Pete shows up. And in rougher, I don't necessarily mean art or story. It's just like, I don't care. Like Pete says it later. Like I hate this symbiote stuff. Like I'm fine with Venom. I'm fine with Carnage. But when we get to like Symbiote Planet, which are all symbiotes, and then there's a god there, and like that's where you just start losing me, and I just kind of don't care anymore.
Yeah. Well, I think,
Yeah.
and this is some of what you're saying. The initial chapter, and it is divided in chapters,
Mhm.
really feels like here's directly following up from Venom. Donny Cates' run on Venom, and here's essentially like you could split off this first part of the book and put it in an issue of Venom, which was a prelude. And if you wanted to cut the page count on this, you could just pick up with him knocking on Peter's door.
Mm.
And then that's when it starts getting into more of like, okay, this is the part where this is an event comic and we're getting into the actual story and other characters coming in.
How did you feel with Peter Parker's apartment being number 616?
I didn't notice that.
I thought it was one of those things that's fun, but if you think about it, it's kind of dumb.
Yeah.
But like overall good. Like I don't mind it.
See, now that you said that, now I'm tempted to flip through Nick Spencer
That's right.
Amazing Issue.
Yeah, I want to see if it lines up.
Because there has to be a shot from outside of his apartment. I don't know if the letter or the artist would have bothered to, but it would be really interesting if it actually lines up.
Mm.
But he brings it also, I guess. So in the end of the issue, what's his name? Is it Robbie? What's Robbie's son's name? Is it Robbie Jr.? I don't remember.
Randy, I thought.
Yeah, Randy. Randy answers the door and then is like, "Hey, Pete, someone's here." And we see Pete change, like putting on his suit. And to me, it wasn't initially, and this goes back to how does Eddie know that he's Spider-Man, etc. And initially, it wasn't clear if Eddie sees him changing, because then Peter like tries to play it off when they're meeting at the coffee shop. He's like, "Yeah, Peter called me," or whatever. He has one quick line about that.
Mm.
So they're meeting for coffee. Stegman's Spider-Man here is just really, really good.
He's so good.
And a lot of this, Frank Martin is helping a ton on this, but the two of them combined, there's really a ton of texture. Like Spider-Man with his mask and everything really comes off like a ton of depth there. And there's slight things with texture and light on his eyes and his mask. And Stegman also does a ton of that classic acting by manipulating the size of the eyes and everything like that. It's just great. And there's a news report of a mass grave found. And in the mass grave includes Angelo Fortunato, members of the Life Foundation, and Thunderbolt Ross. And Eddie puts it together. Wow, all of these people have worn a symbiote before. Thunderbolt Ross, when he wore the symbiote, that was in the Circle of Four storyline, where actually he becomes temporarily, essentially a combination of Red Hulk, Ghost Rider, and Venom, and it's fucking insane. I forget his line. It's like we are smashing vengeance, or there's like it's a giant flashback, and he has a line. It's ridiculous.
That book wasn't written by Donny Cates. Are you sure?
It was Rick Remender.
All right, yeah, that's in his wheelhouse.
And so they figure out, okay, Carnage is tracking down people who've worn the symbiote, even though Venom, he already set that up when he was talking to his son, and they're losing the race. So they need to make a machine that will extract this codex, which I'm hoping that's like slightly more explained in Venom or slightly more going forward, because I still don't really understand what this whole codex thing is.
I think it's like supposed to be like basically all the symbiotes are supposed to have a hive mind, but because like the Venom symbiote split off and has basically been like out of service basically, and like it started its own network. But if you can get all of those pieces of this like new hive mind together, you can somehow contact like the original source, which is null at this point.
Yeah, but the codexes are like separate from the symbiotes themselves. It's some kind of like thing. a part of them. I don't know.
Yeah, it gets left behind in the host, like some sort of marker that they once had a symbiote.
So they need to make a machine that will extract the codex without killing the person. And they don't have enough time for Reed Richards. So Eddie Brock, and I believe this is going from an arc in Cates' Venom, Eddie Brock is like, oh, I know another Reed Richards. So the maker comes in, and he brings along Normie, who was attached to a symbiote in Dan Slott's final Red Goblin arc. And there's this like weird scene where Pete and Eddie are introducing Normie, and I think this kid's name is Jake or something. I don't remember. Or Dylan.
Dylan.
So you've got kind of this generational thing, and Pete doesn't want to subject Normie to be the test subject on the machine, and it's like you could just subject either of yourselves, I guess.
Yeah, that's what I thought the splash page was, where it was like, is it going to be Pete or Eddie? And then I was assuming you're going to get to it. They're just like, wait, Norman's somewhere.
Yeah, they go to Ravencroft, which back to our Clone Saga podcast, we're very
both having flashbacks.
John Jameson is there, and at this point in continuity, he can turn into a werewolf, though we don't fully get that in this issue.
He tries.
Yeah, and he has a kind of fun, quick, like dick measuring contest with Eddie Brock. And I don't remember. I don't think Slott set this up, but apparently I don't remember because I read those issues. But apparently Norman, once he was excised of the Red Goblin symbiote, he like had a personality like break and thinks.
Yeah, Cletus Cass went into him.
And then John Jameson is somehow manipulated by Carnage. I don't think he's previously been attached to a symbiote. So I think this is within this issue, Carnage gets his hands in him. And then Carnage, initially kind of in a form closer to Cletus, is like walking around with like maggots in his mouth and spews them all over, turning a bunch of the prisoners into like Carnage clone lackeys, which sets the alarms off, which fucks with Venom. And I thought this was actually a kind of cool scene where Venom's like, fuck, and he shoots out all the speakers with a gun. And the Carnage Swarm comes like a big wave, and Spider-Man makes a quick sentry joke.
I loved the sentry joke.
That was actually really funny, yeah.
And basically they're trapped in a room with Norman, and Cletus breaks through and gets the strings into Norman. And that is where things end. Like, they're totally, literally up against the wall. I don't know how they're getting out of this. And then, as far as the premise with all the Codex stuff, this series is going to go all the fuck over the place and should actually end up with a pretty big scale.
Yeah.
So as far as that goes, I'll let you guys get to your thoughts in a second. But looking forward, characters that could possibly should appear, not counting those that are in the issue. I mean, there are certain symbiote-related characters that are shown in the splash page. I'm going to count some of those, but just not the ones that are straight up in this issue. So Ben Reilly, of course, from our Clone Saga podcast, we know that Ben Reilly was attached to a symbiote. There's some question with that, though.
Actually.
Yeah, there's some question with that, though, because, you know, the Dan Slott stuff, Ben Reilly died and cloned himself over and over and over again.
Right.
So I don't know if his codex necessarily like is still active or whatever. And on a very similar note, Doc Ock / the current Superior Spider-Man again, he had a moment where he was attached to a symbiote, the Superior Venom arc. Spider-Gwen is on Earth 616 and had that Gwenom arc, but that was like a symbiote from her continuity, so I don't think she'll show up, but knowing her popularity, she just might.
Yeah.
Andy Benton, aka the previous Mania, I think she still goes by Mania, but you know, she was Flash Agent Venom's sidekick, and I read the Funeral Pyre issue. I'm assuming she will come back into this story after Carnage murdered her aunt. And then the current owner of her symbiote Mania, Lee Price, who goes by Maniac, and he was the imposter Venom in the beginning of Mike Costa's run for like 5 issues. He might show up. Then there's Scorpion, of course, Matt Gargan. You expect him to show up. There's Shriek. There's Wolverine. Wolverine was infected by the symbiote during the Daniel Way run. Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers was infected by the symbiote, like really quickly, like during like a Spider-Man tie-in one-shot to an event. I forget which one. And so we could have Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel show up. Deadpool, it was like Deadpool Back in Black, which was the in-continuity Deadpool symbiote story, whereas Deadpool Secret Wars, where he basically takes the symbiote instead of Peter, that's not in continuity. But Deadpool could show up. Mysterio has been infected by a symbiote. The Wizard, which I wouldn't be surprised if the Wizard doesn't show up. That wouldn't bother me. Mercurio, the 4D Man, which is an obscure cosmic villain. Don't expect him to show up. Carl Malice, not a big deal.
Okay, you listed them.
The War Dog. Well, there's some weird ones coming. So there was a military dog which was attached to symbiotes at a while. It'd be cool for him to show up. Silver Surfer. There was the Cosmic Carnage arc from the late 90s post-Clone Saga. And this is where things actually connect, this part of the list, because who's writing Silver Surfer and what is Silver Surfer dealing with under Donny Cates?
Yep.
Also in the Donny Cates Cosmic Corner, during Bendis' stupid run, Drax, Rocket, and Groot were all infected by the Venom symbiote.
And just to tie into that, Dylan was reading an issue of Guardians when he was in the cafe.
Oh, I didn't notice that at all.
It's faded out. It's hard to see, but it's Guardians.
Also in the Cosmic Corner, and I believe Cates set this up in his Guardians or whatever, Wraith, the kind of obscure Annihilation Conquest character that finally got brought back somewhat recently.
Oh, yeah.
He has like some tangential connection to symbiotes, but I don't think it's like quite the same thing. And then there's all kinds of other, I mean, you could get really into the nitty gritty. Like there's that Frank Cho Mighty Avengers arc from Bendis where there was like a symbiote virus, which infected Spider-Woman, Black Widow, Doctor Strange, Hawkeye, Wasp. There's the Carmilla Black teenager version of Scorpion. There's Raza Longknife from the Starjammers was affected by a symbiote. The X-Men Blue technically were attached to symbiotes for a little bit during that Poison arc, but that doesn't matter because they're all, gone. And in an alternate timeline, but like not fully an alternate timeline, and if Cates really wanted to be fucking insane, he could bring in Ego the Living Planet.
I mean, you don't think he is I mean, Ego just showed up, remember, in
Silver Surfer Black.
Surfer Black.
And the absolute most insane thing he could do is back when Marvel initially owned Malibu in the Ultraverse, there was a Rune, which is an Ultraverse character, a Rune versus Venom crossover, and Rune was attached to the Venom symbiote for a minute. So Absolute Carnage, potentially, they didn't do it with Phoenix Resurrection, even though it was literally copy and pasting the title of a Ultraverse Marvel crossover event. The Absolute Carnage is the chance for Donny Cates to bring the Ultraverse back into Marvel continuity. But
if you're wondering why the show went 3 hours, it's because Vince just listed off every character that's ever had a symbiote attached to them.
See, the thing though is, like in your head, before I listed all that, didn't you think it was way more than that?
I was kind of expecting more. I'm happy it wasn't though.
I'm kind of surprised. Like almost every major character actually has never like touched a symbiote.
Well, if Donny Cates really wants to get crazy, he could make the Web of Shadows game canon where everyone got a symbiote in New York City.
Yeah, that was badass symbiote Wolverine. But once I got through that, what are your guys' actual thoughts on this? I thought this was pretty great. I think
so much fun and genuinely, once again, felt like an event. The stakes are completely laid out on the table here. I know Cates is going to get crazy with it. It already started off crazy. Ryan Stegman, like I said, no one draws 60 pages anymore. This was incredibly well done. Arguably, maybe the best stuff I've ever seen from him. just because it was 60 pages, and I don't feel like there was a drop in quality in those 60 pages at all. I kind of think got better as it went along, but yeah, I thought this was really, really, really fun. Donny Cates is kind of become I mean, he's clearly a fan favorite now, but he's kind of become a favorite with me. I've liked almost everything I've read by him. So yeah, this was completely fun for me.
Yeah, I already gave my thoughts with how like the beginning, like I just kind of start to not care because it's just like, symbiotes, they're everywhere, they're everything. And I just kind of prefer it where it's just like, here's Venom, here's Carnage, here's maybe another person. But I just wanted to quickly mention a couple moments that Vince didn't that I thought were really good. Right at the very end, when Pete and Eddie are trapped in the cell with Cletus on the other side, uh, they're just like, there's no way out, and Venom's holding the door, and Pete's just like, all right, fine. Webs up his hand and just starts punching, trying to go through like I think he says like
Punching through reinforced
yeah,
concrete.
like 3 feet of reinforced concrete or something obscene. And for a moment, I'm like, oh shit, he's actually gonna do it. And no, like the next page is just like
No.
there's a hole, there's an attempt, but it wasn't even close. I thought that was really good. I really like the way that the Maker was getting drawn. I don't know if this has been his like his design for a while now, but I really like that his helmet thing like goes back and he just straight up looks like a xenomorph half the time. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's because that's the shape. That's the shape of his head, actually, under the helmet. His brain. Ultimate Reed could like manipulate his. He could make his brain bigger, or gray matter and stuff. I think Cates. I was surprised by his voice for Peter Parker because obviously, you know, he's been writing Venom this whole time, but I really enjoyed his Peter Parker, and I thought also
fine.
I thought also the chemistry between Pete and Eddie was pretty good. It's really that, and honestly, I don't feel like we've actually gotten like that much time with like this status quo of Eddie and Pete, where obviously they have their trouble history. They had the whole Pact era, and when he was Lethal Protector, and then Eddie kind of got out of the game, and Flash was Venom, and like this issue, their chemistry, their relationship really builds on all that, and there's an understanding, but also like they still don't like each other at all. It's like, and to your point, like the whole like symbiotes thing, for the longest time, and really to this day, like deep down, you know, if I was in charge of Marvel Comics, I could just retcon whatever the hell I want, do exactly what I want. I agree with you. It's like Venom and Carnage, fuck off. That's it. But it's gotten to like this, and surprisingly fast, like a lot of the work has been done in the past like 4 years, but it's gotten to this point where Marvel just pushed so hard that there's just like the symbiote, the Venom franchise, like nearly rivals the Spider-Man franchise, which is saying a lot because, you know, there's Spider-Man, Spider-Gwen, Miles, 2099, Superior, all that stuff. Like they pushed the symbiotes so damn hard, like to such extent that it almost like comes full circle, where to me it's like, okay, fuck it. There's just way too much ridiculous symbiote lore, and when you get to like that level of commitment and insanity, it's like whatever, I'll just buy it.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, like once Pete showed up, the book like really got good for me, and like even by the end, where it's like flashbacks to Red Goblin and like mentioning that and stuff. I'm like, yeah, I don't care. This is cool. I'm hyped. Like, so by the end, like I definitely came around to like the idea and all. I'm like definitely gonna be keeping up with this and seeing where it goes. It's just like in the beginning, it was just like.
Yeah, also this issue like kind of sold me on Cates' Venom to an extent, which I started the beginning of that run actually when it launched, but then I was like, I don't really like some of the ideas going here. And obviously, I'm a huge fan of Flash Thompson era. And then it just, it's like over a dozen issues in at this point. But this issue is like, yeah, I don't know. It seems kind of cool, even though I have nitpicks and stuff long term and everything. Which actually, as far as comparing to other recent events, honestly, and it was divisive between the hosts of the show, but I kind of felt the opposite about War of the Realms, where I was reading War of the Realms and I'm like, doesn't totally make me want to go back and read the recent Jason Aaron Thor stuff, even though I will eventually, but whatever.
Oh, yeah, well, going War of the Realms, I enjoyed War of the Realms, but yeah, I don't feel like the need to go back and read all of Aaron to get the full feel for it. But for this, like, I definitely want to. No, I agree. I want to go back and read Cates' Venom, the build up to this. But with the way the symbiotes are now, Vince, you pointed out, like, it's its own brand now. So you know what? If you're mad that I think like having their own planet, having their own backstory, separating it from Spider-Man a bit, lets it breathe and have its own ability flex to do what it wants. So that's why I've always been down for it. Let's get it away from Spider-Man so we can do kind of crazy things and not always involve Spider-Man, even though he's always going to be tangentially involved somehow just because he's so tied to that character. But overall, like it's such a fun book. The ideas are crazy, and with you have this crazy, wacky character. Venom's always been goofy, so the sky's the limit. I felt for how crazy you can make them. So, and this is kind of that on steroids to me. But with nothing else left to say, I think we're all kind of hyped to see where it goes. I am going to talk about my pick of the week, which was Zdarsky's Daredevil #9. Which is part 4 of No Devils, Only God. We open up this book with Matt Murdock playing chess with Reed Richards in the park. If you're wondering, there's like raised chess pieces for the blind, and they also have different. There's kind of like braille on the pieces, so they can read what piece is what. If you're wondering how Matt Murdock plays chess with,
well, clearly he just smells the air and knows where every piece is.
But he's having a very kind of deep conversation with Reed about does God exist and what does he exist for, as Reed, obviously being a scientist, kind of doesn't necessarily believe in God, but he's met godlike beings. So it's kind of revealed that Reed's agnostic, which I thought was kind of an interesting take here. Well, Matt's kind of going through this crisis of faith of he wants to do help, but the way he goes about wanting to help people is a sin to what most people would consider. So he's kind of talking with Reed in this very deep, kind of complex conversation about that I thought really played well with both of them. Also, he goes back and visits the store. Well, go back to his job, and he mentions that he was out for a long lunch with Reed Richards as he was the representative attorney for them. And we get a cool callback footnote with see Daredevil Volume 1, number 21 for that, which I thought was really cool to see that. Well, I can't tell with the way the X-Men report. I think it's Volume 1, number 21, or it's Volume 1, number 2. I think it's 21. Vince can correct me on that. But
I think that's right.
yeah. But he goes and visits with Mindy Libris, who is the owner of the bookstore in the crime family, as she wants to she takes him out for a drink, wants to apologize him because she was kind of using him to make a statement to their family, and kind of reveals that things are getting worse for her as the crime is getting worse, because her family is one of the head crime families in Hell's Kitchen. Matt then goes and visits church, where he kind of has the same discussion over again, but he he's interrupted by one of the sisters as he sees one of the nuns coming in who was kind of badly beaten up or something happened to her, and then Matt gives into his demons once again as he kind of goes out and finds out that there's this child missing, which is why these people in church are all kind of up in arms, like, oh, what happens? So he goes and tracks down the kid who is like in a drug pen, and he just kind of like tears a piece of his shirt and makes a mask out of that. So he's back in action, doing Daredevil stuff again, which he said he wasn't going to do, but we all know that Matt is kind of a fuck up, so he was going to be back doing that again. Meanwhile, Detective Cole North is getting blackmailed by the Owl, and it's revealed that the Owl's going to start beating up and torturing fellow police officers of Cole North for what he's been doing, trying to uncover the Owl's crime operations. But Matt, further giving into his ambitions, goes and meets Mindy in her bookstore. Who, by the way, Mindy is a married woman to her husband, who we saw in the last issue. But Matt kind of confronts her, and in a passionate moment, they give in to each other, and they have sex right on her desk. So I'm sure that's going to go out very well with Daredevil committing a very big sin for himself, committing an affair with a married woman whose husband is like a mafioso. So I'm sure this is going to go very, very well. But all of the spiritual stuff with the Zdarsky handles with Matt Murdock here is very, very good and strong. And I'm very confident to say, like, the way he gets Matt's character so very well that this is going to be a run that's going to stand up with those great Daredevil seminal runs that we talk about there being. Chiquetto still isn't on art here, but the art, the fill-in art, has been absolutely still great by Sharma. It's I think it's almost like it's this and Immortal Hulk that are my favorite books being put out by Marvel right now, and I think this edges out purely because, in a biased manner, I'll give into that, because Daryl's a favorite Marvel character. But this book's been really, really strong, and I urge everyone to go out and read it. I think the first volume just came out, but the way I get my Daredevil collections, I wait for that huge, sweet omnibus. So I look forward to, in 5 years when it comes out, to have it up next to my Millers, my Bendises, my Brubakers, and then my Wades. But yeah.
All right, next, House of X #2. This is the third issue of the Hoxpox saga from Jonathan Hickman. Art here by Pepe Larraz. So a cool kaleidoscope kind of cover. And this issue is all about Moira McTaggart. And the giant retcon here is she is a mutant, and her mutant power is reincarnation. But it's like not really, it's a different concept of reincarnation, where rather than, being born in a new body and, living forward and forward and maybe some kind of semblance of past memories, she actually like travels back in time and like relives her own life.
Yeah.
Which is actually like not a cool power. It's like fucked up Groundhog Day time, however long you live. And there's something about like and I don't know, whatever. So she relives her life over and over, and eventually she realizes she's a mutant when she sees Charles Xavier go public. She gets close to him, and then doesn't really work out, and she develops, at some point she's like, okay, I know I'm a mutant, that's a little weird, and so she develops a cure in one lifetime, and Mystique and mostly Destiny does most of the talking here, track her down, and it was cool to see a focus on Destiny. Basically threatened to kill her in all subsequent lives, and they're like, yeah, just stop, don't try this again, don't do this. And Destiny somehow reveals to her, through her future seeing powers, that the reincarnation is not infinite. She says something like, oh, you could go maybe 10, 11 times. But also it seems that the actual rule here is that she has to live to puberty for her power to unlock and then set it up so that she can make the loop. But like hypothetically, if she gets dropped as a baby and like
Well,
fucked up.
she gets killed before age 13 because when she turns 13, that's when her power manifests.
Mm-hmm.
So
Which I think makes sense.
Yeah, if something happened to her as a kid, that if she dies as a kid, then she's done. And they have Pyro burn her up, and so she'll remember that memory. And this is when she reconsiders everything, and then goes back to Charles, falls in love with him, and she lives through that timeline. And it seems like that timeline is actually like sort of the main Marvel timeline, where they talk about the original years of the X-Men, the all new, all different, and then they basically jump way forward. And Hickman refers to the last 10 years as like the dark decade.
A lost decade.
Lost decade.
Yeah, with an image of the Phoenix Five from AVX. And then they all die in that timeline due to Sentinels. So then she reveals her memories to Charles, which radicalizes him. And so then they build a hidden city. It's kind of like an Inhumans-esque thing, Dark Side of the Moon or Himalayas, whatever. But that falls to Sentinels. So then her next lifetime, she becomes an assassin and hunts down all of the descendants and family members of the Trask family who invented the Sentinels. But she learns that the Sentinels are like fire. It's a human discovery, and they're just an inevitability. So that didn't work. Then she switches sides to Magneto, who then gets defeated by every other hero teaming up against him. Then she becomes Miss Apocalypse, essentially, including a wacky costume with the A on her belt. And that, I forget what's the resolution of that. I think it just like doesn't work.
It like happens for like she's like immortal for a while and like lives a really long time, and it just kind of ends, I guess.
Yeah, I think it just like not to her liking, and at some point she died. I don't remember precisely. And then she's back to Charles, and this is when she says, well, she already did in a previous timeline, but she has him read her mind again. So each time that she goes back to Charles, he's learning everything that she knows and compiling all of her memories and all the different timelines as well. And so that
just this specific time when that echoes back to the moment we saw in Powers of X #1.
Yeah. And that's basically it. I mean, the whole issue is about Moira and showing her different lifetimes. And then the end, also, there's a lot of, this issue relies a lot, I think, more than the previous ones on Hickman's like text and design pages, because
I thought they were really good here.
They're
actually helpful.
They're good, but there's 2 pages where it's just straight up text, but it's like it's clearly within the story captions Moira, whereas most of the other text pages previously have been like behind the scenes like info dumps. So they're used a little differently here, and honestly, those 2 pages I don't really like the technique. But then there's this cool thing where it's a 6-page splitting timeline of her lives, and I have to check out a physical issue because I'd be very interested if it's a pull-out page.
My shop sold out of all of it. Like within the first 2 hours, the store was open.
This issue, very, very huge change to X-Men continuity.
But it works.
Yeah, it works all right, and it's not damaging to her character on like a Draco level or anything like that.
Oh, it strengthens her, actually. It really makes her more of a factor.
Yeah, you can never really reverse this, and you can never really reverse Charles's knowledge of all this.
And her being a mutant makes more sense for Proteus too.
Well, sort of. But it's I still don't 100% understand the continuity and everything, because it seems the initial time that like she meets up with Charles and it shows like the Phoenix Five and everything, that seems to basically be the continuity that we were all familiar with up until Hickman started this series. And then all the others are cut in between. And of course, from from Mora's perspective, they're all lifetimes, but for everyone else, it doesn't matter. They don't even really exist as timelines. And then the final one is the Hoxpox current timeline, and it's just, I guess I don't know if we'll see. And granted, we don't read every single Marvel book, but like, is a single Marvel book going to reference like this Krakoa stuff before House of X is entirely finished? And then I don't know what the status quo is going to be like then. I don't know. It's kind of weird.
It'll be interesting just because this whole initial relaunch phase of Hoxpox is 3 months long. So,
well, 3 months and coming out every single week, so that just it makes continuity very difficult for other books.
Mm.
But I enjoyed it. Pepe Larraz's art was really good, and Marty Garcia.
I'm really kind of like, it was like one of those rare times you gotta get like a mind blown thing, like mind blown reaction for me in comics. I thought it was like a really, really cool idea of not reinventing the wheel, but like strengthening everything that came before it in a really, really cool way. Where I'm really liking the ideas that Hickman's playing with, going back to Powers too, with like the future splicing of mutants together and stuff like that. I think it's very big ideas that I think are fitting this wheelhouse. Though I would like to see, hopefully, we get to the point where we get some superhero stuff, X-Men wise, but I don't know if we're gonna get that, but the very big grand ideas here that he's playing around with are very intriguing to me, and I really want to see how they play out, especially with the stuff like we're getting here with this. And we're only 3 issues in. We're not even a month in yet. Like next month will be the first month, I guess, done, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Immortal Hulk number 22. Joe Bennett's back. And still Al Ewing. That's probably never going to change. Walter Legowski's dead. He got killed by he got killed by the Colonel in the last issue. So we got Alpha Flight kind of trying to figure out what their next plan of action is to go take down the Hulk. They're all blaming Doc Samson because like he got attacked too, but he's fine and he's kind of covering up and protecting the Hulk. So they don't really know what they're trying to plan their next move is because Walter's dead, Titania's here, Radioactive Man's fine. Like he just got hit with he got hit with just a ton of morphine, which was just like, as a recovering addict, it was like you guys like a moment. He's like, that was really crossing a line with what happened to him. But yeah, this evil general is kind of out for blood, ending the Hulk. But and then it's revealed back at Shadow Base that where Dr. McGowan looks and he's wearing the skin carcass of the Abomination as armor now. And it's taken over his mind and he's like starts bleeding. He's like bleeding gamma radiation from his nose. What the hell is that sound?
It's a zipper. I thought it would really, liven things up, get some background noise.
Stop that.
Well, I'm done, so.
You're done zippering?
I am done zippering, yes. Things are zipped now.
Yeah. Also, just an increased way of making this even more disgusting is that, like, the hands open up. So it's like, so this is what it looks like. And then it's just like this, and there's like his face is just like in the middle of it as he's like kind of like drooling and bleeding over himself. As his mind's being more and more eaten away by gamma radiation. Which it's like disgusting in the most kind of weird, fascinating way, which this book has been. This new Abomination continues to evolve. In the meantime, the Hulk is on the run, still hiding out because he's trying to figure out Shadow Base's next move. And Betty and the carcass of Rick Jones are just hanging out in a motel bathroom. Rick Jones is still alive, but like he'll give like a grr or a grumble sound, letting us know he's not totally dead yet. And alone, Betty just sits there and she's in Betty form, but whenever Banner knocks on the door, she turns back into Red Harpy. So she's not quite ready to talk to Banner yet, which is interesting. Bruce is still Joe Fixit, but like Sun and a new kind of different version of Joe Fixit, where it's Sunshine Joe, where he's wearing Hawaiian shirts. And he's talking to McGee, realizing that humans are kind of a horrible, horrible race. So, like he was reading comments on our works and articles of people with trans rights, and seeing that like giving more ammo to this new Devil Hulk for why the world should probably be destroyed, where it's just people don't want to live in harmony. They're just further bad. By the way, they're at the Senate Hotel, which I have to feel is like a reference. But they're planning their next move as they also Vince, they reference Fantastic Four number 12 here, as Joe is just like the Hulk pretty much comes and goes and he's doing his own thing, and he references like he was spotted on a tropical island fighting the Thing. So good work on Al Ewing connecting this together, because I was really worried that was never going to be addressed and we were just going to be left going, okay, well, who knows now. But Alpha Flight tracks Shadow Base to Groom Lake. That's the military base out in Nevada, and that's where Doc Langowski killed it. That's where the colonel killed Doc Langowski. The Sketchwatch is there, which is also doubling for where Area 51 was. So Alpha Flight's going to go, and they think they have the upper hand, and it turns out nope. The Abomination's there waiting with all of Shadow Base, but it turned, and we think, okay, well, that's it for our buddies at Alpha Flight. We start hearing a giant pounding on the door, and the Hulk and his crew are here, and there's going to be a big fight in the next issue, as Shadow Base played themselves. So really, really fun issue here. Bennett continues to be great. Ewing continues to be great. Read this book.
Your mention of Fantastic Four reminded me to actually finish looking up. It actually was Daredevil number 2, where Matt converses with the Fantastic Four with legal matters.
I couldn't tell with the way the exclamation point was positioned. It was like really hard for me to tell. That was that was a clear lettering issue on that. But yeah, this is really fun and disgusting, as it keeps on being.
All right, on to Invisible Woman number 2 from Mark Waid, and I don't remember who drew it off the top of my head. Just gonna.
I butchered that, but that is the artist.
Either way, we start off with another flashback to Sue's days as a kind of S.H.I.E.L.D. agent with Tintreach, Aiden, I believe.
Yes.
Basically, Aiden's like describing his fake wife as basically Irish, just like red hair. I think maybe short was in there somewhere. And basically, like the entire purpose of this flashback is, Sue believes like having a family is nice. I think it's implied that she either recently started having her family with the Fantastic Four and Reed, or she's about to, or something like that. But obviously, she's with the Fantastic Four, and she kind of likes having those people to go back to. Whereas
I read
on the other,
already had Franklin at least.
Yeah, it's kind of hazy where it is. I think the flashback like caption is like 8 years ago or something like that. So it's very well possible. It's just nothing specific. But the other side of the coin is Aiden is saying like, like in this line of work, like spy stuff, you can't have, like loved ones that like might get in your way, or like you can't split your attention between work and worrying about loved ones. And so then we go back to the present, where Sue and as well as Black Widow are in Madripoor trying to track down Aiden Tintreach, whatever. And they go to some bar in the slums area to find, I think his name's Chang Dao, who supposedly might know, give them more information on where to go. And at first, you get the sense that Black Widow is kind of looking down on Sue from like a spy standpoint, and Sue makes some offhand comment about like a fountain still being there after some sort of like affair, and you just get this little black moment where Black Widow's like, "Oh, that was you," and like you can see like the respect comes in. They get in the bar. Chang Dao challenges them to a drinking contest to basically for the info or whatever. So it's Sue versus some giant, almost sumo wrestler type guy. Obviously, Sue cheats and just makes the liquid invisible as she drinks it. Turns out it was poisoned. They get attacked. Um, they get out of that, and I believe at the end they find a dossier in the car of a guy that escaped, and in it is a picture perfectly describing what Aiden described in the flashback of his perfect wife. And we find out that it is, in fact, his actual wife of about 15 years. So he was clearly keeping that from Sue, while they were working together. And that's about the issue. I'm going to be honest, I'm not liking this series.
Yeah,
I think
man.
it's kind of boring, and like the art's just like pretty meh.
Would you describe it as stiff?
Yes.
It feels like everything, like there's no fluidity of motion I can garner from it. It looks like I'm looking at a still shot of a really nice, of like a really nice fan art still lifes. Like I don't feel like really it's laid out really that well to be panelized, and there's something about it. It's just like it's lifeless.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
The colors are weird too in this book, where they're like muted in some pages, really dark in others, brightened in other places. I don't get it.
It feels flat to me. Like everything just feels flat. Like there's no depth.
It feels like when I'm editing footage on a camera before I throw color correction onto it.
Mm.
That's how I would describe it too. I'm just not interested in what's going on. You're right. I'm going to stick it out because at least I'm going to at least give it another issue because it's only 5 issues, and I like Mark Waid, but I'm not loving it. It's the steam's especially with this whole did she have an affair with the other spy? Like I'm not interested in that. I don't want that.
I guess that's the thing too. I didn't even pick up on that. Like I guess it's there, but
yeah. It kind of sad because we were positive on the first issue.
I was kind of middling with the first issue. I don't remember what I came off as, but like, the first issue was definitely better than this.
Liking it and wanted to see where it went, and this is where it went.
Yeah, I think I was like you were saying you want to stick it out for at least another issue to see where it goes. I think that's where I was at last issue.
Okay, so are you off then?
I think at this point I'm going to be off.
All right, sounds good to me. I'm going to stick it out one more, but yeah, that's where I'm at with this. Close us out with Sensational Spider-Man Self-Improvement.
All right, we're going to flash back in time to 1982 right here. Peter David is going to spin us a yarn about Spider-Man in a costume that isn't red and blue. He's going to do this with Rick Lenardi. The basic story behind this is, I think around this time, some fans sent in a letter, like basically a script for a story with Spider-Man getting a different costume, a black costume, which oddly enough he does get at some point, just a bit later down the line. The letters are actually reprinted in here, and in my opinion, are kind of better than the story that gets told. But basically, Pete and Human Torch are fighting Firebrand, and he gets some serious burns, so he goes to the Baxter Building. Reed just like makes him a new suit, which it seems like a pretty Reed thing to do.
Out of unstable molecules.
Yeah, out of unstable molecules that won't burn, with flame retardant webbing and cybernetic web shooters built in. So he takes some used to getting it. Pete needs some time to get used to the cybernetic web shooters, but he goes and finds Firebrand. He's after his ex-wife for money or something or another. Also, this is just a dumb aside, but in that she like took money out of a secret account from his or whatever, and she says like, "Oh, just let me get to the computer. I'll like put it all back in the account." And I'm just like, all right, you're gonna tell me this is 1982, but you're gonna tell me that people just have computers in their house? Like pick one here.
Yeah.
But basically, like people almost die because Pete doesn't know how to work his suit, and he goes and says, "Yeah, I'll just go back to my red and blue." This was just boring. I didn't like it. Um,
Yeah.
like I said, I read through the basically script that the fans sent in, like actually back in the 80s, and honestly, I thought that was a bit better. I think his was like a 2 issue thing instead of like a half issue deal, but I don't know. And then the second half of this issue, titled "With No Power" from DeFalco, Friends, and Buscema. I actually liked this part of the issue a lot. It's kind of like a neat inverse of Pete's origin, where he's swinging by and some kid just lost his uncle because a gang shot him. And you find out over time that the uncle got the kid at a job at a warehouse. He was like bragging about it to friends. A gang shows up to him and is like, "Hey kid, let us in so we can steal shit." And he ends up not doing that. So basically, the opposite of Pete letting a criminal go. This guy actively stops criminals, but the uncle dies anyway. So Pete kind of has this like moral dilemma of like, had I done the right thing, would Uncle Ben even still be alive, or would he be dead anyway? But he ends up helping the kid who comes back to he kid has like a gun and is planning to shoot the gang members that he didn't let in that ended up killing his uncle. And Pete stops him and kind of says like, it not necessarily like great power comes great responsibility and stuff, because the kid doesn't have any powers, but he's just it's this nice like heart to heart where they have these similar defining tragic moments in their lives. And like I said, it's just like a neat inverse on Pete's origin, and it still turns out well. Like he says, like this is something you'll remember for the rest of your life, but hopefully, like you can move past it at some point. And I don't know, it was much better than the Peter David story in this issue.
Yeah. I didn't really enjoy either story. I thought it was like I read the second one on like autopilot because like
Yeah,
the first one already was like, oh god. But
it's rough.
yeah, this was tough. Like this was rough. It was tough and it was rough. Like
A lot
the
of
art
things.
the art wasn't particularly great. The scripting wasn't particularly great. I've seen better from David. This it's upsetting because like I don't know if this was just something that was stuck in 1982 and they just pulled it out to do it now, or they had him like touch it up for this.
Yeah, who knows?
So I didn't get around to reading this. I think you guys know exactly what it is. So they
Yeah,
just
it's
this is
the
their,
original black suit concept.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's adapting that original pitch as it was supposed to be, and that includes the costume and of course all the clickbait articles about this issue are Marvel just introduced Spider-Man's new costume from 1982,
No.
and stuff like that. Obviously, Peter David, longtime Spider-Man guy, Rick Leonardi, the two of them worked together on Spider-Man 2099. Obviously, the DeFalco friends team up, major Spider-Man creative team as well. Firebrand, just because I have nothing to add besides this, Firebrand is originally an Iron Man villain and was introduced at the very end of Archie Goodwin's run, and was very clearly his backstory was like he was a political activist and he was frustrated with the system and the state of activism that he couldn't get anything done, so he went violent. And he's from Detroit, and he's clearly 100% in the original story supposed to be a black man, and not really in not actually not at all in like a stereotypical or like stupid way. It was very clear. And then the next writer on Iron Man just revealed him as a white dude, and so basically just made a villain which was initially, and not only the fact that they changed his race, but his like first two appearances he was like a very very promising villain for Iron Man, and now it's like he's in this fucking flashback Spider-Man issue and no one knows who he is.
Hmm.
I like the idea of this issue, but it sounds like they didn't really execute it very well.
No.
I had more fun looking at the original sketch that I saw like by John Byrne or something in like Wizard magazine or something. Like I had more fun looking at the old red and black suit proposed thing back then than reading the story.
All right, so another comment which doesn't have entirely to do with this issue, but it connects it to what Mike just said. So the idea when they eventually pull the black suit and connect it to the symbiote concept and go forward with Venom, the idea of a symbiotic like living costume for a Marvel superhero was actually first proposed by John Byrne for Iron Fist, but Chris Claremont and John Byrne had moved on from Iron Fist. The book was canceled, and so David Michelinie actually asked John Byrne about that concept and got permission to use that concept on the black suit in Spider-Man leading towards Venom.
So with that little last tidbit, that's our show for this week. Overall, a lot of good books. So a few duds for me, but I think most of it came down to taste. I don't think there was any truly bad comic books this week. Other than this was pretty bad. But I guess last kind of rounds, we'll do picks of the week one more time, and then Vince can reveal what the retro book is for next week. Mine was Daredevil number 9 as far as picks of the week go.
Mine was Doom Patrol Weight of the Worlds number 2.
Absolute Carnage.
Number 1 of 90.
Number 1 of 5, but then it isn't.
Well, you factor the times.
Vince, you might know this off the top of your head. What was the miniseries? It might have been Transformers or something, like the original Marvel comic, where it was initially a 4-issue miniseries, and then it ended up being an ongoing. So the last issue was like issue 80 in a 4-issue miniseries.
Yeah, I think it is Transformers, and I think it was issues 1 through whatever of a 4-issue miniseries. And then I think the 5th issue, I think, might even say issue 5 of a 4-issue miniseries or something. They kind of joked about it.
Yeah.
So our next retro book, we are going to read. Let's see. We got some interesting options.
Oh God. Oh no.
And it's going to be. We're going to go with a very approachable one. We are going to read Huntress number 1 from 1989.
Okay.
I think I saw an ad for that when I was pulling ads out of Starman today.
Interesting.
It's all connected.
I'm not really familiar with the series, but it's first post-crisis. Helena Bertinelli should be interesting. So tune in next week to see about that and other various things. Thanks for watching.
All right.
Show, and bye-bye.
Take care until next week.